If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 40, Alfaro. The falling regal mammoth was finally noticed by Sunny. Even for a seasoned member of the Four Heavenly Kings, the sight was enough to make him turn pale with fright. Bad luck! Bad luck! Legs, get moving! The usually calm and confident Sunny grabbed Komatsu and turned to run. Komatsu looked back and his face contorted into a cartoonish mask of terror. Behind them, a new threat had emerged. The cliff snakes, startled by the mammoth's fall, had crawled out of their caves. Mistaking Sunny and Komatsu for the cause of the commotion, they were now charging toward them. The cliff snake was a mammalian beast with a capture level of 30, the apex predator of the regal wall. Once disturbed, they would attack in swarms. Their flesh was inedible, and their attack and defense were enhanced by the ability to harden their muscles. On Regal Island, they were a top-tier beast. Dragging his exhausted body, Toriko used his fork and knife to dig a deep pit in the ground. It was too late to run, especially with Sunny and the others behind him. Sunny! Over here! Jump in! Toriko yelled, then jumped into the pit with Rin. If they were hit squarely by the regal mammoth, even they would be turned into pancakes. Its incredible weight was no joke. Ah! Sunny roared, using every last ounce of his strength to pull Komatsu into the pit at the last possible second. Boom! Just as they got in, the regal mammoth crashed down. The free fall from the regal plateau triggered an earthquake of several magnitudes. From his vantage point, Kenji could clearly feel the tremors. The resulting gust of wind kicked up a small, localized sandstorm that swept out in all directions. What a beast, Kenji said, in awe. This regal mammoth was the largest creature he had ever seen. Even some of the whales in the sea couldn't compare to its sheer tonnage. Rumble! The regal mammoth, which had landed on its back with its 6 legs in the air, rolled over and got back to its feet. The pair of small wings on its back looked rather comical, there was no way it could fly with those. Thump, thump, thump. Searching for its calf, the regal mammoth began to charge around, leaving a crater in the ground with every step. Besides the battle wolf, it was the strongest beast in the first biotope. Hey, hey, hey! At this size, my feelers can't perform knocking on it, Sunny said, his face grim. The size of the regal mammoth was beyond his expectations. Who said you can't? Impact knocking. Kenji descended from the sky, unleashing a punch that seemed to fall from the heavens. It slammed into the regal mammoth's body, the powerful force penetrating its tough hide and instantly immobilizing the rampaging beast. Amazing! Sunny exclaimed. Then, his expression changed as he glanced at the black rocks emerging from the ground. It was the cliff snakes that had been chasing him and Komatsu. By huddling together and hardening their muscles, they had survived the impact of the mammoth's fall, seemingly without a scratch. Kenji stood on the mammoth's back. Kiss, carrying Coco, flew at the same height. Coco, it's all yours. Got it. You've already taken care of the regal mammoth. If I still need your help with the cliff snakes, then we 4 heavenly kings would be pretty useless, Coco said with a smile. He gripped his right arm, and the skin of his hand turned a deep, venomous purple. Streams of purple venom shot from his fingers toward the tensed-up cliff snakes like a machine gun. The neurotoxin instantly paralyzed them. After administering the anesthetic, Coco leaped down, his movements swift and stylish. Komatsu, tears streaming down his face, ran toward Coco, repeatedly calling his name. In Komatsu's eyes, Coco was, at times, more reliable than Toriko, especially after having just faced a life-or-death crisis. What a magnificent entrance! He stole all the glory. The timing was impeccably beautiful, Sunny said, covering his face, his voice filled with envy and jealousy. Why can't I ever get such a perfect opportunity? I want to make a magnificent entrance too. Something has already entered the regal mammoth. It's a Gourmet Corp GT Robo, Kenji said, jumping down and looking at the mammoth. There's indeed a special electromagnetic wave inside the regal mammoth. It must have entered the mammoth's body when it was on the regal plateau, Coco said, narrowing his eyes and confirming Kenji's statement. The mammoth's mouth is open. You can enter through there. The knocking will last for half a day, Kenji explained. There was no need for everyone to go in. Even if the Gourmet Corp got their hands on it first, it wouldn't matter. I'll stay out here. There are other Gourmet Corp members outside, Coco said. Toriko and the others nodded and, without hesitation, entered the regal mammoth's mouth to prevent the gourmet corporate from stealing the jewel meat. Plate shuriken! Swish! Suddenly, a white plate flew from the distance, spinning at high speed like a buzzsaw, its target Kenji. Crack! Kenji threw a punch, shattering the plate into a cloud of white powder. The force of the impact pushed him back a step. Coco, this one's a bit tough, Kenji said, looking at the bloody scratch on his fist. He felt a slight stinging sensation. The gourmet energy in his body surged, and the wound healed instantly. But it was a testament to his opponent's strength. This was no ordinary Gourmet Corp member. Thud! A giant, pink GT Robo landed from the sky. It was much larger than a normal robot. On its shoulder stood a white-haired robot, holding 2 white plates in its hands. Gourmet Corp's waiter, Alfaro. I didn't expect you to come, Kenji said calmly, somewhat surprised. As far as he knew, the only person in the Gourmet Corp who could use plates as a weapon with such power was Alfaro. He had appeared during the Century Soup arc, effortlessly killing 2 beasts with capture levels of 70 or 80. This Alfaro was a powerhouse who could enter the gourmet world, on par with the members of Biotope Zero. In the Gourmet Corp, he was the waiter who exclusively served the boss, Midora. His status was very high. Even piloting this GT Robo, he should be able to capture beasts with capture levels of 70 or 80. What a terrifying electromagnetic wave! Coco broke out in a cold sweat, a blackish-purple poison oozing from his skin. This was a deadly poison, a sign of how seriously he was taking this. The giant pink robot was one thing, but this white one was incredibly strong. Grinpatch mentioned that you destroyed a new model GT Robo. That kind of strength is not that of an ordinary gourmet hunter. I was bored, so I came to see for myself, Alfaro's voice came from the robot. If he's a real threat, I'll just eliminate him. A young man, how strong can he be? The advantage is mine. Chapter 41, Starfire. The sound of robotic footsteps echoed behind them. They turned to see a black GT Robo approaching. Kenji knew it was Starjun. Coco's eyes widened, it was the same one he had seen at the cave beach. Vice Chef, leave this to me. You can handle the jewel meat, Alfaro said calmly. He knew Toriko was no match for Starjun, and he was more than enough to deal with Kenji. Alfaro, you're here too. Very well, I'll leave this to you then, Starjun said, glancing at Kenji. Although he was eager to test this man's strength, the jewel meat was a higher priority. He would let Alfaro gauge Kenji's abilities. Whir! The GT Robo spun at high speed, like a drill, and bored through the regal mammoth's tough abdominal skin, entering its body. Awoo! Lotta came to Kenji's side, staring intently at the GT Robo, her eyes filled with a savage, wild aura. A battle wolf. Alfaro was slightly surprised. He had never expected to see a top-tier beast from the gourmet world in the human world, and it wasn't even a cub. This GT Robo couldn't bring out his full power. If he had to fight one man and one wolf, he wouldn't come out on top. I'll handle this, Lotta. I don't need your help, Kenji said, patting her. He planned to use this GT Robo to test out some of his new moves. Coco, you take the big one. I'll take the small one, Kenji said, turning to him. Coco nodded. He knew he was no match for Alfaro. Tap, tap. Kenji tapped his knuckles against his own body twice. His muscles instantly swelled, as if inflating, before returning to their normal size, but his aura had intensified several times over. HAAA. Knocking released. We can begin now, Kenji exhaled, a grin spreading across his face. This was the first time he had released the knocking that sealed his power. But against an opponent like Alfaro, it was worth it. Interesting. Thud. Alfaro leaped down from the giant robot's shoulder and walked toward Kenji. No wonder he could destroy a robot made of super alloy. This level of strength would rank him among the top in the Gourmet Corp. You have good strength. Interested in joining the Gourmet Corp? It would be a shame to kill you, Alfaro said, feigning an appreciation for his talent. Are you an idiot? Kenji said, speechless. If he actually joined, and Jiro found out, he would surely storm the Gourmet Corp headquarters and beat him to a pulp. Midora wouldn't even stop him, a fight with Jiro right now would do him no good. Then die. Plate shuriken. The white robot launched several plates. Compared to before, both their flight speed and rotation had increased significantly. A creature with a capture level of around 50 would be instantly shredded. Humph. Kenji opened his mouth and spat out a stream of deep blue flames, which pulsed with a lifelike rhythm in his palm. Starfire, one of the Starforger's basic abilities. The flames had a starlight effect, as if you could see the orbits of stars within them, star clusters rotating, surrounded by endless motes of light. The intense heat, as if from a star, began to distort the space around Kenji, seeming to be able to ignite the world itself. This was the extent of the power Kenji could currently use. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Whoosh! The deep blue flames rose up, forming a curtain. The moment the white plates touched it, they vanished into nothingness. You're the one who used a long-range attack first. I'm just returning the favor. Fire style, Great Fire Annihilation. Just kidding. Comet of Legend. Kenji opened his mouth, and the deep blue flames transformed into a torrential breath attack, rushing toward the GT Robo with the speed of lightning. Wherever the breath passed, the air was scorched black, and the ground melted into a liquid state under the intense heat. Nanny! Alfaro couldn't believe it. The GT Robo, with its incredibly durable armor, was melting at an astonishing rate. He had already lost control of the body, the sensors had been instantly incinerated. ZZZ, ZZZT. Kenji, you just, wait. Alfaro's enraged voice, distorted by static, came through. A few moments later, the GT Robo had been reduced to a puddle of molten metal. Cough, cough. Kenji cleared his throat. Using a breath attack in human form felt a little lacking. He would have to try it again when he unlocked his dragon form. Amazing, Coco said, surprised. The electromagnetic waves radiating from Kenji now were terrifyingly strong. Gourmet Corp headquarters. Inside a giant transparent dome, Alfaro, dressed in a black bodysuit covered in white sensor nodes, wore a white neural link helmet. Feeling the GT Robo he was controlling being destroyed, he slowly removed the helmet. A strange face was revealed. He had a large nose that extended from the bridge of his nose to his forehead, even more exaggerated than Komatsu's. He also had 6 more arms than a normal person. Kenji, was it? I, Alfaro, will remember you. Alfaro's expression was as dark as storm clouds. He was, after all, a high-ranking member of the Gourmet Corp. Even though he was piloting a robot and couldn't use his full power, to be defeated by a young man was a great humiliation. However, Kenji's flames were not to be underestimated, they had melted the GT Robo's super alloy body. Since Kenji couldn't be recruited by the Gourmet Corp, the next time they met in person, he would have to crush this genius in the cradle. Bang! The giant robot, perhaps frightened by Kenji, was finally taken down by Coco after a considerable effort. But he could only sit there, panting heavily, his energy completely depleted. His specialty, poison, was ineffective against a robot with high poison resistance. While this showed that his poison wasn't strong enough, the GT Robo's performance was still ridiculously impressive. I hope Toriko and the others are okay. One of them has a death sign, Coco said, looking at the regal mammoth with a worried expression. Have faith in them. Here, eat some devil serpent meat to recover. Right, thanks, Coco nodded, accepting the piece of meat and slowly eating it. He knew this was a test from President Ichiryu, otherwise, he wouldn't have called them here. Kenji had already helped them a lot by dealing with Alfaro. As for the black GT Robo that had gone inside, Coco believed that Toriko and the others could handle it. Chief Mansum, we're at the bottom of the regal wall. There's a giant GT Robo specimen here, pretty much intact. Are you interested? Kenji called Mansum. Oh? That's a rare one. Of course I'm interested. I'll send a team to retrieve it later, Mansum's surprised voice came through the phone. Chapter 42, Jewel Meat. When he heard that the robot was piloted by Alfaro, Mansum's expression changed. That was an extremely dangerous individual from the Gourmet Corp. But what surprised him even more was that Kenji had managed to defeat him. Although the robot couldn't bring out Alfaro's full power, it was still strong enough to defeat Toriko and the others. He was pleased, after all, Kenji had just joined the IGO. If he had joined the Gourmet Corp, he would have been very worried. Chief Mansum said he'll send someone to pick it up later. Coco, the robot's internals aren't too damaged, are they? Kenji asked. No. Poison isn't very effective against GT Robos. I had to use Aqua Regia to deform the robot's core antenna before it lost its balance, Coco said with a wry smile. His poison was very effective against living creatures, but the GT Robo was designed to explore all sorts of harsh environments, and a toxic environment was naturally within the scope of its design considerations. The GT Robo wasn't without weaknesses, its core was less durable than its body. He had exploited this weakness to defeat it. He hadn't worked as a gourmet hunter for a while, and his skills had declined a bit. Besides his advantage with poison, his physical strength couldn't compare to Toriko's or Zebra's. Hey! Someone give me a hand! Sunny's voice came from the regal mammoth's mouth. But instead of floating down with his feelers as he usually did, he was in a head-first freefall. Thud! Coco and Kenji heard him, but neither of them moved. Sunny made intimate contact with the ground, and a large bump immediately swelled up on his head. He's fine. He won't die from that, Kenji said with a laugh. Coco nodded in agreement. Although Sunny looked weak, he wouldn't die from a fall. You two bastards! Couldn't you have caught me? Sunny stormed over to them, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Such an ungraceful landing, it wasn't beautiful at all. He felt like he wanted to die. Would you have died? Kenji asked. Sunny shook his head. Even though he had used up a lot of energy, he was no ordinary person. At most, the fall would hurt a bit, it wouldn't kill him. Then there you have it. Coco and I naturally didn't need to save you, Kenji said with a smile. Forget it. I won't hold it against you, Sunny said, shaking his head. By the way, Coco, can you see how Toriko and the others are doing? After they had entered the regal mammoth, he had fought the first robot, defeating it after a considerable effort, and had then come out first. He had to admit, the performance and strength of the Gourmet Corps GT Robos were monstrous. To destroy them from the outside with brute force required an immense amount of power. He had used his extremely fine feelers to destroy the robot's core, immobilizing it, similar to how Coco had used Aqua Regia. Only a move with overwhelming destructive power could destroy the robot with brute force alone. Of course, this was because their own power levels were too low. If their gourmet cells evolved a few more times, they too could destroy a GT Robo with brute force. Although the Gourmet Corps member who went in after is strong, let's have faith in Toriko. He won't lose to that robot, Coco said, his voice full of confidence in his friend. Sunny nodded in agreement and sat down on the ground with a thud. 2.5 hours later. Coco stood up. The powerful electromagnetic wave had disappeared, and the death sign he had seen on a certain person had also vanished. Hey, Sunny! Use your hairnet to break our fall! Toriko's shout echoed from the regal mammoth's mouth. Several figures jumped out. Komatsu flailed his limbs in terror in mid-air, while Toriko held a piece of meat that glowed like a jewel in one hand and the unconscious Rin over his other shoulder. Whoa! Is that the jewel meat? Subarashi! I will catch it with the utmost gentleness! Sunny exclaimed. The jewel meat was so beautiful. He spread his hairnet, but because the gaps were too large, it only caught the jewel meat. Komatsu and Tina were lucky enough to get tangled in the net. Thud! Toriko was not so lucky. He slipped through the gaps and landed face first on the ground, his nose instantly gushing blood. When he looked up, his nose was still bleeding profusely. He glared at Sunny. Hey, Sunny! You said you'd catch us gently. Did you just mean the jewel meat? But Sunny was completely captivated by the jewel meat and didn't even hear Toriko's complaint. Kenji and Coco seriously suspected that because Sunny had just gone through a similar experience, he didn't want anyone else to have a soft landing. Mr. Sunny! Look at Miss Rin! Komatsu, still hanging in the net, shouted frantically. The one in the most danger was Rin, who had a severe abdominal wound. She didn't have Mansum's strength to lock her blood and recover on her own. Nanny! Rin! Sunny's face turned pale. He looked at his unconscious sister, who had a serious piercing wound in her abdomen. The jewel meat, which he had been treasuring just moments ago, was tossed aside. Compared to his sister, even Acacia's full-course menu could be discarded. Although they bickered constantly, he cared deeply for his sister. Feeler surgery. Sunny's dazzling hair moved over Rin's wound, the 0.1 micrometer feelers performing a simple procedure. But this was just first aid, she still needed treatment from a medical team. Komatsu and Tina were amazed when Coco explained what was happening. Gourmet hunters were truly all-rounders. In reality, if a qualified gourmet reviver had been present, they would have been much better suited to treating the wound than a gourmet hunter like Sunny. Coco hadn't seen a death sign on Rin. The death sign he had seen before was not on her, but on Toriko. Now, the electromagnetic waves radiating from Toriko were even stronger than before. His cells had evolved. He must have eaten the jewel meat to overcome the crisis. He had been on the verge of death. Awoo! Terry arrived before them, riding a twin-jawed dragon. Terry! Toriko's face lit up. It seemed that not just him, but Terry had also gone through a tough fight. When will the knocking on the regal mammoth be released? Coco asked. Kenji's knocking was incredibly powerful, the regal mammoth was still unable to move. If he had used his poison to perform knocking, it would probably have worn off by now. As expected of that man's disciple. Soon. About half an hour left, Kenji estimated. He had only temporarily paralyzed it. Some of the creatures his master Jiro had knocked had remained that way for over 100 years. Teppei, as a gourmet reviver, often traveled around not just to research ingredients, but also to free the creatures that had been knocked by Jiro. Chapter 43, Tasting the Jewel Meat. A convoy of vehicles from the Research Institute arrived, bringing with them the small regal mammoth that Sunny had captured. Seeing its parent, the small mammoth immediately started running toward it on its short legs. In front of the adult regal mammoth, the small one looked like a tiny bean, its size and presence worlds apart. Stop! Knocking! PSSH! Kenji took out his knocking gun and gave the agitated small mammoth a refreshing shot to the head. It instantly froze in place, just like its mother. Load this robot onto the truck. It's time to go back, Kenji said. In half an hour, the knocking on the two regal mammoths would be released. If they released it now, the mammoths would go on a rampage and attack them indiscriminately, and they would just have to perform knocking on them again. The researchers, filled with admiration, quickly loaded the giant GT Robo onto the truck. It was an excellent research specimen. Back at the Research Institute, with the help of more advanced and comprehensive medical equipment, Rin quickly regained consciousness. She would be fine after a short period of rest. That night, on a spacious rooftop of the Research Institute, Kenji and the others sat around a table. In front of them was a giant platter. Even with the lid on, they could smell the penetrating aroma of the jewel meat. The moment the lid was lifted, a dazzling light burst forth. Although it was night, the rooftop was illuminated by the light from the jewel meat, as if the sun had risen. The sudden, blinding light made it impossible for them to see the meat on the platter. Once their eyes had adjusted, the sliced jewel meat was revealed. It glowed like a jewel, with beautiful patterns running through it. The crystalline meat juices flowed on the platter like liquid gold. The aroma was overwhelming, a stunning visual and olfactory experience. It didn't look like an ingredient, but rather a work of art. In ancient times, jewel meat was incredibly valuable. Because it shone like a jewel, it was also used as a wedding ring, a powerful testament to one's ability to capture a regal mammoth. Many had embarked on the quest to capture jewel meat for this very reason. Sob, it's so moving, but I can't even record it, Tina said, tears streaming down her face. The light from the jewel meat was too intense, her camera couldn't capture the moment. But to be able to see the jewel meat with her own eyes, as a reporter, this trip was more than worth it. Toriko, you already ate some, didn't you? Sunny asked, noticing the glow emanating from Toriko's body and recalling that several pieces of the jewel meat had been cut off. No wonder his skin was so radiant. That's right. If I hadn't eaten the jewel meat, I would have died back there. That guy Starjun is really strong, Toriko said, touching his muscles. His cells had evolved, becoming even stronger than before. And this jewel meat is really amazing. I just went to the bathroom. Stop, Toriko. Kenji knew what Toriko was about to say and quickly cut him off with a look of disgust. This was dinner time. There was no need to discuss such a fragrant topic. It would ruin everyone's appetite. The others also glared at Toriko. They knew what he was about to say, and it would definitely spoil their meal. There was no need for such a disgusting description. Toriko scratched his head in embarrassment. Ahem, let's just eat, he said. Kenji picked up a piece with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth. Using a knife and fork was too much trouble. Delicious. As he chewed, a rich and savory meat juice flooded his mouth. Even without any seasoning, the original flavor of the jewel meat was exquisite. In fact, ordinary seasonings would only detract from it. The juice was incredibly refreshing, not thick or greasy. The moment it slid down his throat, it felt like an electric current shot through his body. Every single one of his cells was glowing with pleasure. It wasn't an illusion, his body was literally glowing. The texture of the jewel meat was extremely complex. Some parts felt like chewing on a heart, others like chewing on a liver. Lotta, this piece is for you. Have a taste. Kenji cut off a piece of jewel meat and placed it in front of Lotta. Although it was just a mouthful for her, the amount of jewel meat was limited. If they ever encountered another regal mammoth, he would definitely capture it. He wanted Lotta to have a taste, it would be awkward for her to just watch. Awu chomp, chomp. Lotta swallowed it in one bite and began to chew. Since the regal mammoth had a much larger original species in the gourmet world, the battle wolf found the ingredient acceptable. This settles it then. Toriko said, taking a leisurely sip of champagne and looking at the full moon in the night sky. What have you settled, Toriko? Sunny's voice interrupted him. After eating the jewel meat, Sunny was radiating light. Every single strand of his long, thick hair was glowing. He was definitely the shiniest one there. Of course, I've decided to make the jewel meat the meat dish of my full-course menu, Toriko said with a calm smile. The empty spot on his menu was about to be filled. Hold on a minute. Sunny's sudden shout kicked the impending decision out the window. Toriko was furious. Sunny, what the hell are you doing? Komatsu and the others were speechless. Can it really be interrupted like that? Is no one going to fix the fourth wall? Toriko, look at the glow all over my body. The jewel meat is obviously more suitable for me, Sunny said, stroking his glowing hair. The jewel meat was truly a beautiful ingredient, perfect for him. In your dreams, Sunny. I decided first. Get out of the way. The two of them immediately started arguing over whose full-course menu the jewel meat would join. Although there was no rule that an ingredient could only be chosen by one person, since they knew each other, it would be awkward to have a duplicate on their menus. Arguing like this is too much trouble. Why don't you just see whose fist is harder? Kenji suggested, not minding stirring the pot. He was ready for some drama. Toriko and Sunny looked down at their fists, then at each other with burning intensity. The idea sounded good. Come to think of it, it had been a long time since the four heavenly kings had a proper spar. What do you say, Toriko? Want to have a long overdue chat with our fists? Sunny was full of fighting spirit. He would absolutely not give up a beautiful ingredient like the jewel meat. There was nothing more suitable for his main course. All right, Sunny. It's been a while. Let's see if you've gotten any stronger, Toriko said with a grin, the phantom of the red demon appearing behind him. Coincidentally, he had no intention of giving up the jewel meat either. Its flavor was undoubtedly satisfying and would make the perfect meat dish for his full-course menu. Chapter 44, Arena, I want to eat fish. The two of them didn't end up fighting. Toriko thought the jewel meat was good, but it wasn't a must-have for him. In the end, because the jewel meat was a better fit for Sunny, it became the main course of his menu. Toriko, seeing Sunny's smug, triumphant expression, almost punched him. Mr. Kenji, you're finally back. That's a big wolf. Smile was startled by Lotta. Wolves were already intimidating, let alone a battle wolf. Lotta won't attack you, Smile. Is the house finished? Kenji asked. It was completed a few days ago. I'll show you around. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, we can change it, Smile nodded. For your excellent service, I'll definitely give you a 10-star review later, Kenji said with a smile. Smile scratched his head. Well, thank you, Mr. Kenji. When Kenji saw his house, his eyes lit up. It was a 3-story, traditional-style villa. The windows, entrance, and balcony were all simple yet elegant. From the windows, he could see that there were many rooms inside. Because it was built with hard marble and granite, it gave off a sense of unshakable stability. Kenji was very satisfied with this. Although a candy house looked whimsical, its shelf life was too short. From the outside, I'm very satisfied. Your design is excellent, Smile, Kenji praised. I'm glad you're happy. Some of the furniture is carved from ingredients, so it's easy to replace in the future, Smile said. Kenji's requirements were much more reasonable than Toriko's candy house. For a house like this, you just had to change the furniture periodically. Let me show you the inside, Smile said, leading the way. Kenji used facial recognition to open the door. The interior decoration was luxurious but not gaudy, with a warm and inviting atmosphere that had a hint of simplicity. The chandelier in the living room was made of candy crystals, and the soft carpet was made from the fur of a beast. With edible furniture, if he ever got too lazy to cook, he could just take a bite out of a chair. The kitchen and bathroom were also meticulously designed. But the gym left Kenji speechless. At his current level of strength, would lifting weights even do anything? Smile, I'm a gourmet hunter. What's the use of a gym? Kenji asked. Smile. He was stunned. Right. I'll help you change it to something else later, Smile nodded. It was indeed his oversight. It's fine, leave it. It's not like I'm short on rooms, Kenji said, shaking his head. After a quick tour, Kenji was very satisfied and immediately paid Smile the remaining balance. He had only paid the deposit before. Smile loved clients like this, who were decisive and paid promptly. So comfortable. Lying on the large bed in the master bedroom, Kenji let out a comfortable moan. The soft bed and the faint scent of lavender made him feel drowsy, and he soon drifted off to sleep. Yawn. Kenji slept until noon the next day. He sat up, yawning and stretching, and ruffled his messy hair. A bed in a hotel could never compare to the comfort of one's own bed. Starforger, Miss Arena, are you free right now? At God's tongue. Chef, I want to eat fish. Komatsu was far away, and the partner Grandmaster Ichiryu had arranged for him hadn't shown up yet. So, he had decided. Arena, I choose you. Miss Pink Elf, oh my, is Kenji asking Arena on a date? That pink piggy, Elysia. Kenji ignored her. High attack, low defense, a glass cannon. The next time they met, Kabadon, make her blush. Ha ha ha. Elysia, you wouldn't want to see the earth get wiped out by the hairsker of the end, would you? God's tongue, I'm free right now. What's the matter? For the past 2 days, Arena had been catching up on the chat group's history. She was incredibly curious about the ingredients in Kenji's world. As a chef, ingredients were far more appealing to her than power. Starforger, come over to my place. I need a chef to cook breakfast. God's tongue. Arena was fuming. Was he treating her, the owner of the God's tongue, like a maid? She was the young lady of the Nakiri family. The injustice. Crash test pilot, I thought the ingredients in Mr. Kenji's world could be eaten raw. Daigo had tasted the food Kenji had sent before. It was so delicious you couldn't stop eating. Starforger, poisonous ingredients like the puffer whale need to be cooked before they can be eaten. Starforger, aren't you interested in tasting a delicacy you've never had before, Arena? This line, it really got to her. There were very few chefs who could create a dish that could move the God's tongue. Although Arena hadn't reached the point of anorexia like her mother, her superhuman sense of taste meant that she had no interest in ordinary food. Now, an opportunity was presented to her. Arena was undoubtedly tempted. Temptation equals action. I'm in. God's tongue, all right. I'll see for myself if it's really that delicious. Arena had joined late, so she hadn't had a chance to taste the ingredients from the world of Toriko. Miss Pink Elf, oh, I'd love to go too, but I have to fight some Honkai beasts soon. The next hairsker was probably about to be born, so the Honkai energy was becoming more active, and Honkai beasts were appearing more frequently. As one of the top fighters in the fire moths, she had to go out and clean up the beasts that were harming people. Lady Justice, there have been a lot of trials lately. She used to think that trials were a good way to pass the time, but now that she had joined the chat group, she didn't want to go anymore. If it weren't for Nouvellette, her prime minister, forcing her, she would have just stayed in the Palais Mermonia. Starforger, after Arena finishes cooking, I'll send you all a portion. Sun God, I'm good. Apollo was not a carbon-based life form. He couldn't, and didn't need to, eat that kind of food. God's tongue has requested to enter. Kenji immediately accepted. A spatial vortex opened, and a figure stepped out. Arena had long, light blonde hair, and her skin was as delicate as white porcelain. Her purple eyes, besides having the coolness of a lofty beauty, also held a hint of nervousness at being in a strange place. Kenji admired the youthful girl before him. She had a curvaceous figure that surpassed most girls her age. Her Totsuki Academy uniform perfectly outlined her ample assets, and the black, glossy, over-the-knee socks accentuated her long, slender legs. As expected of the JK-style uniform, a short skirt, and over-the-knee socks. He thought back to his own high school attire, where the boys' and girls' uniforms were both a jacket and long pants. Everyone was a perfect gentleman, so who were they trying to protect against? Kenji was very satisfied with Irina's looks and figure. Now, to see her cooking skills. At this point in her story, Irina probably looked down on commoners' food. Besides her family background, this was partly due to the influence of her father. But in the end, food was meant to be eaten. A dish from a five-star restaurant wasn't necessarily more delicious than one from a small, ordinary diner, and the price was prohibitive for most people. Oh, right. Kenji suddenly remembered that the members of the Nakiri family seemed to have a foodgasm ability that didn't just cause clothes to explode, but also walls. I should be careful. This is a new house. Chapter 45, Embarrassing Irina. Chocolate, marshmallows, nut cookies. Oh my god. Irina's nose twitched. The faint, sweet scent of various ingredients filled the spacious living room. Carving furniture from ingredients wasn't difficult, but practically no one would do it. After all, food, no matter how durable, was not suitable for furniture in terms of quality and longevity. A vase carved from chocolate, a marshmallow throw pillow, a candy crystal chandelier, a cookie bookshelf, a honey crystal coffee table. This kind of furniture usually only existed in storybooks and manga. Kenji chuckled to himself. If she saw Toriko's candy house, which is made entirely of ingredients, she'd probably have a heart attack. Won't furniture made of food spoil? Irina couldn't help but ask. It might be a law of this world. For example, in your world, if the food is too delicious, it's like an aphrodisiac for the person eating it. Kenji had also appreciated the food wars. Anime. Unfortunately, many of the risque scenes on streaming services had been censored, either with holy light or a black screen. You had to go to a browser to find the uncensored version. Hey! Irina was taken aback. Aphrodisiac? What a crude description. Because that phenomenon was so common in her world, everyone was used to it. No one found it strange. Kenji took out a tablet, which he had redeemed from the shop. He could upload memory fragments from his mind onto it. Irina watched with curiosity. In the first episode, after eating a delicious dish, the faces of two characters, Kurase and Minagasaki, were flushed, their eyes glazed over, and they let out a series of seductive moans, their legs involuntarily clamping together. No way, is that what happens in my world? Irina's face was beet red, and her head was practically steaming. To behave so shamefully in public, it was indecent. Yes. Have you never noticed? Kenji paused the video and asked with a smile. When you're the one eating, you don't think much of it. But to see it as a bystander, it was a social death. Kenji hadn't even shown the clips of Irina's own reactions to delicious food. If he had, she would have been so embarrassed she would have dug herself a hole and fainted from shame. This. Irina thought back. Her secretary, Hisako, often tasted her dishes, and her enraptured expressions were probably, maybe, possibly no different from the two in the anime. And during the shokuchiki competitions, when the chefs were particularly skilled, the judges' reactions were basically like they had taken an aphrodisiac. Chateau mat. Irina's face instantly turned pale, her expression crumbling. When she enjoyed a particularly satisfying dish, was her reaction also like that? Ahem, let's just get to the cooking, Kenji coughed, worried that if Irina continued down this train of thought, she would let out a scream that would make Neo proud. What's the ingredient? Irina took the offered out. She saw that the anime still had many episodes left and couldn't help but worry. Kenji led Irina to the kitchen and took out 10 puffer whales, all fresh and unpoisoned. Is this a pufferfish? Irina thought the shape looked familiar. In Japan, the poisonous pufferfish was a popular ingredient in some restaurants. If prepared correctly, it was exquisite. But if the poison wasn't completely removed, eating too much could be fatal, and there was no effective antidote. However, there were significant differences between a puffer whale and a pufferfish: the color, the fins, the length, the weight. The toxin of a puffer whale, just 0.2 milligrams, is enough to kill a person within 30 minutes to an hour. A miscalculation of even 1 millimeter in the cut will cause the fish to instantly turn toxic. The location of the poison sac is different in each fish, so the placement of the cut must also change. The taste of a puffer whale is many times more delicious than that of a regular puffer fish. Kenji gave a simple introduction. This ingredient was a real challenge for a chef. Not even a millimeter of error. Irina bit her red lip. That was an incredibly strict requirement. This must be a very precious ingredient. Are you sure you want me to handle it? I have plenty more, Kenji said nonchalantly. I'm not a chef. Do you want to watch a video of a successful preparation? I'll try it myself first. Irina went into a changing room and emerged in a white chef's uniform. Although it covered her from head to toe, it couldn't hide her figure. That chef's uniform is so round, no, I mean, that chef's uniform is so white. What a fine knife, she said. She was using a knife from Kenji's kitchen, which Smile had procured. While it wasn't one forged by Milk, it was still a high-grade knife on the market. A good chef could tell the quality of a knife just by holding it, and it was the first time Irina had ever used such an excellent blade. Considering your physical strength is on the weaker side, this stamina potion produced by the Ego can temporarily boost your power, Kenji said, taking out a vial containing a clear blue liquid. It was an extract from some creature developed by the Ego Research Institute, which could enhance strength for a certain period of time with no side effects. It had almost no effect on him, but without it, Irina probably wouldn't even be able to cut the puffer whale. To allay her suspicions, Kenji drank half of it himself. After confirming that he was fine, Irina used it. It had no taste, but her strength did indeed increase. She felt like she could kill a bull. The moment she made the first cut, even with her enhanced strength, Irina felt a surprising weight. The puffer whale only weighed about 7 kilograms, but it felt heavier than cutting a giant tuna. The flesh was incredibly firm, a sign that its essence and flavor were highly concentrated. It was the first time she had ever prepared such an ingredient. She now understood why Kenji had given her that potion. It really did require a considerable amount of strength to prepare. Oh no! Due to her nervousness, her hand trembled, and the white puffer whale instantly turned toxic. There goes over 90 million yen, Kenji said nonchalantly. An unpoisoned puffer whale was worth at least 100 million, while a poisoned one was worth 8 million on the black market. Irina blushed, embarrassed to have wasted such a precious ingredient. She silently cursed herself for being so careless. Don't worry about it. Here's a video of a successful preparation. It might give you some inspiration, Kenji said, handing his phone to Irina. He had gotten the video from Tina earlier. Irina nodded and began to watch. She was stunned by Komatsu's skilled knife work. This Komatsu, who looked like a second-rate chef, possessed such incredible skill. She had always been in the habit of judging people by their appearance, but now she realized that there were always people better than her. Her own cooking skills were not bad, but the assistance of the god's tongue played a large part. So that's how you cut here, what a strange anatomy. Irina studied the video intently. It was the first time she had seen the internal structure of a puffer whale. It was different from preparing a regular puffer fish, which was the method she had just used. Although the location of the poison sac was different in each fish, the video tutorial was very helpful, and Irina felt a little more confident. The second fish, poisoned. She rested for 3 hours. The third fish, poisoned. She rested for 4 hours. The 13th fish. Several days had passed. Thankfully, the flow of time was different in different worlds. Careful now, don't let your hands shake. Irina held the purplish-black poison sac with utmost concentration, beads of sweat trickling down her cheeks to her chest. If it weren't for the food Kenji provided to restore her stamina, and the rests she took after each failure, she would have burned out long ago. Her eventual success was likely influenced by Kenji's gourmet luck, otherwise, her chances would have been slim. But even with that help, the fatigue still required time to recover from. There was no way she could have prepared 13 puffer whales in one go. Swish! Irina's movements were slow and gentle as she carefully cleaned the toxic membrane, and finally, she removed the poison sac in one go. Wow! A golden legendary! With the poison sac removed, the white puffer whale began to glow with a dazzling golden light. Chapter 46, The God Tongue's Shock. Ha, ha! Irina leaned on her knees, panting heavily, her rosy lips parted as she gasped for air. Her ample chest heaved dramatically. Stray strands of hair at her forehead and temples were plastered to her skin with sweat. Glistening beads of perspiration trickled down her cheeks, collecting at her chin before dripping to the floor. Although she was physically exhausted, looking at the golden, shimmering puffer whale, a sense of satisfaction and emotion she hadn't felt in a long time welled up inside her. The last time she had felt this way was before her father's training. This must have been what she had lost, the pure, emotional connection to cooking. "Here, wipe your face," Kenji said, handing her a towel. Irina gave him a grateful look and dabbed at the sweat on her face. Her physical strength is too weak, Kenji thought. She had needed so much help just to prepare the puffer whale. Whether she was suitable as his partner was still up for debate. He had called her here to cook breakfast, but several days had passed. However, thanks to the vast amount of energy stored in his body, skipping a meal was no big deal. This had been a good test for Irina. "I've never seen an ingredient that glows before," Irina said, the golden light of the puffer whale reflected in her violet eyes. A normal pufferfish didn't glow. An unpoisoned puffer whale sells for 100 million. Now, its value has increased 5-fold. Kenji explained that this kind of puffer whale was practically impossible to find on the market. Besides only spawning every 10 years, the number of chefs who could perfectly prepare it could be counted on one hand. Irina's talent was decent, but she had taken too long. Komatsu had done it in half a day. She had taken several days, and that was with the help of a potion. The puffer whale was a relatively small ingredient. When faced with larger, special preparation ingredients, Irina would probably be at a complete loss. "It's worth the price," she said. Although she didn't know the price standards of this world, she was certain that in her own world, a wealthy person would pay a fortune for it. "I'll leave the cooking to you," Kenji said, returning to the sofa. Irina didn't start right away. It was her first time handling such a top-tier ingredient. She needed to think carefully about how to prepare it. After a few minutes of contemplation, she made her decision. The fish meat would be made into sashimi, the organs would be pan-fried in the puffer whale's own fat, and the dorsal fin and skin would be used to make a rich soup. For a top-tier ingredient like this, no available seasoning could possibly enhance its exquisite flavor. The translucent sashimi was arranged on a bed of ice, the cold making the flesh even firmer and more springy. The organs were pan-fried to a light golden brown, releasing a rich aroma. The puffer whale soup was a creamy, milky white. Kenji licked his lips. He had only ever had the sashimi, as their conditions at the cave beach had been limited. So sweet. Irina picked up a few slices of sashimi and chewed them slowly. An indescribably sweet flavor flooded her mouth, growing more intense the more she chewed. She chewed with such gusto that her jaw muscles began to ache slightly, but it was an addictive sensation. She couldn't stop. Irina closed her eyes. She felt as if she were swimming in a bikini in the deep sea, surrounded by countless lively puffer whales. It was a flavor as deep and bottomless as the ocean, bringing a supreme sense of bliss to her god's tongue. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. It was delicious, the god's tongue could find no fault with this ingredient. The moment she swallowed the fish, her eyes snapped open. The fatigue from preparing the puffer whale was completely gone, and her body felt filled with an inexhaustible strength. Every cell seemed to be overflowing with joy. Irina's red lips parted slightly, letting out a seductive moan. Her legs began to rub together. The deliciousness had triggered a subtle, involuntary reaction in her body. Ahem. Irina came back to her senses, realizing her own behavior. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. So embarrassing. If she hadn't seen that anime before, she wouldn't have thought much of it. But now, she couldn't look at such a shameful display in the same way. "How was it?" Kenji asked, silently chanting a calming mantra. As a hot-blooded young man, that sensual scene had been a bit stimulating. A fire was burning in his lower abdomen. His little brother was now standing at attention. Irina's reaction was just too lewd. Sinful, sinful. Seeing it in the anime and seeing it in real life were two completely different things. It was a dreamlike flavor. "There are no ingredients in our world that can compare," Irina said with sincere emotion. And this was just the sashimi. For a raw ingredient to possess such flavor, she felt that any seasoning would only detract from the experience. Even when a puffer whale is poisoned, its taste doesn't change. If people only had the chance to eat the poisoned ones, how many do you think would eat it? Kenji ladled some soup for himself. It was fresh and savory, full of collagen, and more fragrant and delicious than any fish soup he had ever had before, as if it embodied the profound flavor of the sea. There would definitely be people who would eat it, Irina said after a moment of thought. If the taste didn't change, then even with the deadly poison, many people would probably risk it. To hear the Tao in the morning, one can die in the evening without regret. By the way, the organs of the puffer whale have nourishing and strengthening properties, even more so than the sashimi. You should try it, Irina. After all, a chef needs stamina too. Irina nodded, picking up a piece of the organ and putting it in her mouth. If the sashimi was sweet, then the liver was rich and mellow. Energy began to surge through her. She felt like she could go for days without sleep and still have boundless energy. A warm current flowed through her body, and she could clearly feel herself being nourished. Although it didn't instantly make her incredibly strong, the effect was very noticeable. Are there many ingredients as delicious as the puffer whale? Irina asked curiously. Kenji spread his arms wide and said with a smile, this is the world of gourmet. The entire earth, no, the entire universe is filled with an endless variety of delicious ingredients. The puffer whale is delicious, but there are countless ingredients that are even more so. You're worried about your god's tongue talent, aren't you? Irina nodded. Because of her talent, she could already feel that ordinary ingredients no longer moved her god's tongue. Logically speaking, the god's tongue is a talent, an ability. That means it can be controlled, not just a passive skill. The reason owners of the god's tongue became so desperate for flavor that they eventually lost their ability to eat was because they couldn't control their talent. The god's tongue was just a hypersensitive sense of taste. If it could be fully controlled, it could be turned on and off at will, and their normal sense of taste would be no different from an ordinary person's. Irina was stunned. The god's tongue can be controlled? Don't be so surprised. You've joined the chat group. It's time to broaden your horizons. Then how do I control it? Irina asked expectantly. I don't know. I'll ask someone for you later. Kenji's master Setsuno was a living national gourmet treasure. She had surely met people with highly developed senses of taste. He would ask her when they met. Thank you, Irina said gratefully. Kenji waved it off. It's nothing. Even if it couldn't be controlled, if she wanted to continue pursuing delicious flavors, this world could satisfy the god's tongue. After all, the ingredients on earth were countless, not to mention the vast and boundless universe. Chapter 47, Daigo becomes the light. Irina had left, and Kenji was a little disappointed. He hadn't gotten to see the Nakiri family's legendary foodgasm ability. That ability was probably only effective in the world of food wars, a unique law of that world that was restricted in others. If Irina's own power was strong enough, perhaps she could use it in other worlds. The world of food wars. Irina returned to her room through the spatial vortex. The experience had not been a dream, the delicious taste of the puffer whale still lingered on her tongue. Thinking back to her embarrassing display, Irina's face turned beet red. She had never noticed that she reacted that way when she enjoyed delicious food. Oh, right. That anime on the tablet, it seemed to have many more episodes. There were probably more embarrassing videos of her. She couldn't let him upload them to the chat group, or she would never be able to show her face again. She had brought back 2 portable food containers. One contained the puffer whale, and the other, the jewel meat. These containers, which could preserve the freshness of food, were also something she had never seen before. She had already tasted the puffer whale. Now, she was incredibly curious about the taste of the jewel meat. Meat that glowed like a jewel, what an incredible world. After visiting once, she wanted to go back countless times. I'll give some to Grandpa to try, and then I'll taste the rest with Hisako. She opened the lid, and the light from the jewel meat made her involuntarily squint. It was too bright. Careless. I should have worn sunglasses. Crash test pilot, Mr. Kenji, I have a question for you. What exactly are we fighting for? Daigo was a little lost. He had just become a giant of light, but he really didn't understand why this power had chosen him. Starforger, oh, Daigo has become the light. Kenji knew that Daigo would be confused. After all, he had joined the Guts team by accident, let alone going from an ordinary person to the godlike Ultraman Tiga. However, if Daigo had to go through a few rounds of the Smile Hero matchmaking system, he wouldn't be confused anymore, because he wouldn't have time to be. Crash test pilot, the light. Daigo felt that there was a hidden meaning in that phrase. Oh well, Kenji definitely knows. Ghost of the Uchiha, why do you fight? Is that such a difficult question to answer? Think about what you would lose if you didn't fight. Star Forger, Madara is right, Daigo. Think about what you care about, your family, your friends. Miss Pink Elf, if we didn't fight, humanity would be harmed by the Honkai. Crash Test Pilot, I understand. I want to protect everyone. I will fight for the things I want to protect. In the cockpit of the Gutswing 2, Daigo touched the spark lens inside his clothes. The confusion in his eyes began to dissipate. Although he would have figured it out on his own eventually, having someone point it out to him had sped up the process considerably. Crash Test Pilot, but why am I Ultraman Tiga? Star Forger, your DNA contains the genes of a super ancient hero warrior, you could call it the genetic factor of light. It resonated with the body Tiga's original self left behind for battle, the stone statue in the pyramid, and you became Ultraman Tiga. Star Forger, Galza and Melba are just the beginning. More monsters will appear in the future. You can use Tiga's power to fight them. Dianmei Ruan, the genetic factor of light. Ruanmei was curious. The Giant of Light was a creature she had never seen before. But unfortunately, the chat group's rules forbade members from harming each other. Crash Test Pilot, the original self? The projection did say that the giants who left Earth in the past left their fighting bodies behind. Where did Tiga and the other Giants of Light go? Star Forger, as for Tiga's original self, I don't know where he went. He either went back to Orion or he's just wandering around. The stone statue on Earth isn't the only one he left behind. Tiga and Noah were known as the corpse-leaving duo of the Ultra World. You were bound to find a stone statue left by one of them under some ruins. Noah was slightly better than Tiga in this regard. Even in the Ultraman Trigger universe, Tiga could still show up. He was a sneaky one. He could transform with or without light, with or without a transformation device, and even with a doll. Daigo was slightly taken aback. Some memories began to surface in his mind, inherited along with Tiga's power. Star Forger, Daigo, Tiga is a mage type. You should have some inherited memories of his skills. Don't play him like a red-colored brute. Although the Daigo happy type was simple and violent, Kenji wanted to see if a mage type Tiga was overpowered. Crash Test Pilot, I do. But Tiga has a lot of skills. Daigo checked his memories and found a great deal of information about Tiga's abilities. He would try them out the next time he encountered a monster. Star Forger, by the way, Daigo, Tiga's ex-girlfriend was sealed on Earth by him. Although the seal hasn't been broken yet, I'm telling you now, she's going to come looking for you, ... Crash Test Pilot. Seeing the keyword, Daigo's mouth twitched. He searched Tiga's memories and did indeed find the existence of the dark giant, Kamara. But that was the original's fault. Why was she coming after him? Go find the original Tiga. I can just turn into Tiga to fight. Star Forger, don't even think about explaining to Kamara that you're not the original Tiga. She doesn't care who your human host is. As long as you have Tiga's power, she will most likely slap you. In a stage show, Kamara had gone up and slapped Orb in his Spacium's Aperian form. Even borrowing Tiga's power got you a slap. You can imagine what would happen if Tiga's handsome face appeared in front of her. Crash Test Pilot, can I give this power back? Daigo was sweating bullets. She sounded like an unreasonable shrew. Why did he have to bear the brunt of Kamira's anger in place of the original Tiga? Lady Justice, pfft, Daigo's story sounds a bit tragic. Miss Pink Elf, we probably can't help you with this one. Star Forger, so, Daigo, you should start training your body. Besides being influenced by spirit, an Ultraman's combat power is also related to the physical condition of their human host. You should also study Tiga's inherited skills more. Star Forger, by the way, some monsters may seem powerful, but their horns are very likely their weak points. If you encounter one, try attacking their horns first. You might be able to weaken them. Although he was playing a mage-type Tiga, the horn-breaking demon persona was a must. Daigo wasn't a Det King like Orb or Z, who could borrow power from other Ultras to transform into new forms. However, Tiga had a lot of skills, much more comprehensive than the Daigo happy type. If he ever went to Tiga's world, he could use a jeep with failing brakes to specially train Daigo. This was the legacy of the Warriors of Light. Crash Test Pilot, I understand, Mr. Kenji. What could Daigo do? Even if he felt wronged, he could only endure it and move forward. A monster's horn? He felt something stirring within him, as if something was awakening. Chapter 48, Housewarming. Master, my house is finished. Are you free to come by sometime soon? Kenji called Jiro. He didn't know many people, so he was inviting everyone he knew for a housewarming party. I'm free. Any day is fine. I'll bring Setsuno with me, Jiro's drunken voice came through the phone. Then the day after tomorrow, Kenji said after a moment's thought. He would use tomorrow to prepare. Jiro chuckled and agreed before hanging up. Kenji didn't have to guess to know he was going right back to drinking. Kenji then contacted Toriko and the others. They were all free on that day and promised to come. As for the ingredients for the party, he just needed to make sure there was enough. On the day of the housewarming, his neighbor Toriko was the first to arrive, bringing a red-furred pig as a gift. It's nice, but it doesn't look edible, Toriko said with disappointment. He still felt that his own candy house was better. It wasn't delicious at all. Hajikaru, you idiot. Your candy house gets eaten in a short time, and if you leave for a while, it gets eaten by other creatures, Kenji retorted, speechless. The Heavenly King Koko's house, although built in a somewhat special location, was made of durable materials. Toriko's house, on the other hand, although he had never seen it, was made entirely of ingredients and was definitely not built to last. Haha. But what the hell is Hajikaru? Toriko just laughed. To each their own. He loved to eat, so his house had to be delicious too, a place where he could enjoy sweets anytime, anywhere. Next time, he would have Smile build him a candy castle. His previous house wasn't big enough for him to eat, he'd lose control for a moment and eat the whole thing. With his appetite, even a gourmet tower would be devoured in no time. Hey, Mr. Kenji! Komatsu waved, and beside him were Mansum, Coco, Rin, Tina, Sunny, and Tom. Kenji's dealings with Tom were mostly ingredient-related. Although he hadn't known Tom as long as Toriko had, their relationship was quite good, largely thanks to Tom's wife. Kenji often brought rare and hard-to-capture ingredients to Tom for trade, and because of this, Tom's wife was much gentler with him. Toriko also brought ingredients, but as a glutton, he would often eat them on the way. So, for a straightforward, high-volume client like Kenji, Tom's wife had encouraged him to befriend him. Rare ingredients would not be in short supply in the future. Nice style, Sunny said with appreciation. It was built by that genius gourmet architect, Smile, wasn't it? Sunny knew of him. The landmark of Gourmet City, the Gourmet Tower, was designed by Smile. If he and Toriko were geniuses in the field of gourmet hunting, then Smile was a genius in gourmet architecture. I remember this is near Toriko's house. Your neighbors now? That's right, Kenji nodded. Kenji, we're here. An old man and an old woman slowly walked up the path. They looked like an ordinary elderly couple, but in reality, they were legendary figures. The old man was his master, Knocking Master Jiro, and the old woman was his master's wife, Setsuno, a living national gourmet treasure. She was stooped with age and wore a pink dress, full of a girlish spirit. Her hair was styled like a disc, and her slightly aged face was kind and approachable. Don't be fooled by her frail appearance, the energy within her body was terrifyingly immense. Besides Jiro, everyone else present combined probably couldn't match her energy reserves. Her age was a factor, she hadn't had any major battles in years, and the energy she had accumulated through food immersion was an astronomical figure. At the cooking festival, when they were both hit by the Light Eater's energy drain, Setsuno was fine, while Cho immediately collapsed. The difference was clear. The Light Eater could drain at least 10 million kilocalories at once. During the Gourmet Pyramid arc, even Zebra, the one with the highest calorie count among the 4 Heavenly Kings, only had 4.5 million, and Toriko had 3 million. This meant the Light Eater could drain both of them dry with a single move at that time. You must be Master Setsuno. My name is Kenji, Kenji said, walking up to greet them. Ho ho, what a handsome young man, Setsuno said, looking at Kenji with approval. She was very pleased with Jiro-kun's disciple. Kenji smiled and nodded, relieved that he didn't have to get Jiro's hairstyle. He knew that when Toriko went to Setsuno's diner, he had to get a pompadour, or he wouldn't be allowed in. Setsu! Granny! Toriko exclaimed. He hadn't expected to meet this legendary figure here. His reservation to eat at Setsuno's diner, which he had made 4 years ago, was almost up. Many people's reservations were for 10 years in the future, they didn't even know if they would still be alive by then. It's Toriko, Setsuno said, looking at him and the others. Coco and Sunny nodded respectfully. The short old man must be knocking Master Jiro. It was the first time they had seen the mysterious Jiro in person. Oh my, what a great personage! Tom took off his sunglasses, his face filled with shock. He had also tried to make a reservation at Setsuno's diner but couldn't even get a spot. Even the presidents of many countries had to make reservations like everyone else, their privileges were useless. Tina's reporter instincts kicked in. She was already recording the scene with her camera. An opportunity like this was a once-in-a-lifetime scoop. No need to be so nervous. We're just here for a meal today, Jiro said, putting on no airs. Yo, it's a battle wolf. What a coincidence. When he saw Lotta, Jiro's eyes widened, and he said with emotion, I was raised by the Wolf King Guinness. I never thought my own disciple would also take a battle wolf as a family member. Setsuno slowly nodded. She had seen the Wolf King Guinness, he was Jiro-kun's family. Lotta looked at Jiro, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. She sensed a familiar, kin-like aura from this human. Komatsu, I'll leave the cooking to you. Use any ingredients you want, Kenji requested. Ha, all right. Komatsu's already large nostrils flared even wider from nervousness, and his eyes were wide. The others were one thing, but this was Setsuno. If he was too casual, he might embarrass himself. Don't be nervous. Just cook simply, Setsuno said, shaking her head. In her eyes, Komatsu was a chef with great potential. The future belonged to these young people. In the dining room, the group sat around a large table, 3 of the 4 heavenly kings and 2 legendary figures. Komatsu didn't make anything too complicated. He used ingredients with low capture levels, like piano lobster, cheese rabbit, and pork belly tofu. Everyone ate happily. Kenji glanced at Toriko, the glutton had been eyeing his furniture. It was a good thing he hadn't built everything out of ingredients, or Toriko would have taken a few bites. Setsuno tasted the food and was very appreciative of Komatsu's skills. In the Great Gourmet Age, there were many naturally delicious ingredients that required no cooking. The higher the capture level, the more delicious the ingredient itself. To be able to cook such a high-level dish with simple ingredients was a testament to Komatsu's skill. Kenji, when are you planning on entering the gourmet world? Setsuno asked with a smile. With Kenji's current strength, he could handle beasts with capture levels of 200 to 300. Exploring the outskirts of the gourmet world shouldn't be too much of a problem for him. Chapter 49, A Warning for Jiro. Kenji put down his chopsticks and stroked his chin thoughtfully. The gourmet world wasn't that far off for him. Besides the beasts with high capture levels, the more dangerous aspect was the various extreme and harsh environments. To survive in the gourmet world, one had to have the ability to adapt to or overcome those environments. Master Setsuno, do you want me to enter the gourmet world now? Kenji asked curiously. He should be fine exploring the outskirts of the gourmet world as long as he was careful. If he encountered something he couldn't handle, he could just retreat. Ichi asked me to pass on a message. He's been very busy lately, otherwise he would have come to meet you this time, Setsuno said, shaking her head. She knew Kenji was strong enough, but before entering the gourmet world, he should at least get used to some of the harsh environments in the human world that were similar to it. Oh? Grandmaster Ichiryu had you and Master Jiro give me a message. Kenji's interest was piqued. As his current superior, he was very curious about this legendary figure. Toriko and the others pricked up their ears. The old man wants Kenji to enter the gourmet world? It's nothing major. He just wants you to go pick up a member of Biotope Zero, Jiro said, glancing discreetly at Toriko and the other 2. Picking someone up was the main objective. The secondary objective was to give Toriko and the others a little push. After all, if a peer of theirs could enter the gourmet world, they would naturally be more motivated. Jiro sighed internally. Ichiryu has worried so much about these 4 young men. Even though they're not his own, he treats them like his sons. Master, hold on a second. Are you sure about this? I'm a complete newbie in the gourmet world. You want me to go and welcome a Biotope Zero member who can operate there? Kenji couldn't help but look astonished. He knew that those people were incredibly strong, all powerhouses handpicked by Ichiryu from all over the world. His experience in the gourmet world was definitely inferior to theirs. Jiro just smiled without saying anything. Kenji fell into thought and roughly guessed who he was supposed to meet. But he would only know for sure when he saw them. As for why Chiryu wasn't bringing them out himself, it was obviously unnecessary. The members of Biotope Zero were all people who could adapt to the gourmet world's environment, and Chiryu, as the president of the IGO, was a very busy man. Master Jiro, when can we go to the gourmet world? Toriko asked curiously. The alluring gourmet world had always been a place he longed to go. You guys. Jiro observed them for a moment, then shook his head. You're still a bit lacking in strength. The gourmet world isn't a place you can conquer with strength alone. Just follow Ichi's arrangements. Entering the gourmet world recklessly will get you killed. Toriko clenched his fist. He felt like he was ready. If it had been someone else saying it, he might have doubted them, but a figure like Jiro had no reason to trick them. However, he wouldn't be satisfied until he had tried it himself and gotten a taste of the harsh reality of the gourmet world. Where do I need to go? Kenji asked nonchalantly. He probably didn't need to go deep into the gourmet world. There were 3 main, relatively easy routes into the gourmet world: the Life Waterfall Basin on Zappel Island, the Port of Ghosts on Yetu Island, and the Sanzu Way on the Wak continent. All 3 paths led to the gourmet world, but survival beyond that point depended entirely on strength and luck. The other routes had an extremely high mortality rate. You're going to the Life Waterfall Basin on Zappel Island, Jiro said. The so-called 3 routes were only for most gourmet hunters. For a superpowered individual like him, he could enter the gourmet world from anywhere. Kenji nodded. The Life Waterfall Basin was also where the air fruit tree was, related to the ingredient air, but it couldn't compare to the real thing. It was like the difference between a subject and a king. I see. When do I need to be there? 3 days from now. You can just wait there. Of course, if you want to go and explore a bit beforehand, that's fine too, Jiro said. Kenji, this is your ID. With this, you can enter many of the IGO's facilities, Mansam said, handing him a black ID card. The cover was emblazoned with the 3 golden letters IGO, and inside was Kenji's position information. Kenji glanced at it and put it away. Toriko, want me to bring you back some ingredients from the gourmet world to try? Kenji teased with a smile. Toriko swallowed hard but shook his head. No need. I'll be entering the gourmet world myself soon enough. I'll get them myself then. He was indeed curious about the taste of the ingredients there, but there was a greater sense of accomplishment in capturing and tasting them himself. Master Jiro, do you have any information about Earth? Sunny asked. He had originally planned to ask the gourmet reviver, Yusaku, but now that Jiro was here, he couldn't contain his curiosity. I do. I know where all of Acacia's full-course menu items are. But even if I told you, you couldn't get them with your current strength, Jiro said with a smile. Although those ingredients were indeed delicious, Jiro wasn't that passionate about them. He preferred the ingredients on his own full-course menu. Young people. Don't be too ambitious. To capture ingredients of that level, strength is an essential component. Do you have the resolve to face the 8 kings right now? Toriko and the others were stunned. The 8 kings were super beasts with capture levels of over 6,000. Was Acacia's full-course menu located near their habitats? If you become worthy, I don't mind telling you. Kenji, Setsuno, and I are leaving now, Jiro said, standing up. He and Setsuno left, and Kenji quickly went to see them off. Kenji, come to my diner next time. I'll cook for you. If you want to eat Jiro-kun's full-course menu, I'll have him go to the gourmet world and catch it for you, Setsuno said with a cheerful laugh. Either is fine with me, but that would require some preparation time, Jiro said, his expression unchanged. A trip to the gourmet world was nothing to him, he would just treat it as a bit of exercise. Master Setsuno, do I need to make a reservation? Kenji joked. Ho ho, you're Jiro-kun's disciple. You don't need a reservation, Setsuno said with a smile, giving Kenji a playful look. They were family. Unlike Ichiryu's other disciples, Kenji's relationship with them was closer, so he could come whenever he wanted, as long as she was at the diner. After I get back from the gourmet world, I'll visit your diner, Master Setsuno, Kenji said with a smile. By the way, there's one more thing. Master, the damage knocking you taught me is very useful, but if you keep sealing damage in your body, it will accumulate over time. If it's all released at once, your body won't be able to withstand the massive amount of accumulated damage, right? Kenji decided to give Jiro a heads up. That guy Acacia had held back when he taught Jiro the knocking technique. Master, you should have a lot of damage sealed in your body. You should find a way to release it to avoid this hidden danger. Acacia, when you see Jiro in his peak condition, with no damage in his body, you should be so happy you could fly. You're right. Jiro's expression changed slightly. He knew all too well how much damage had accumulated in his body. If it were all released at once, even someone as strong as him would instantly explode and die. Since it was a knocking technique, there had to be a way to release it. For all these years, because there had been no one strong enough to threaten him, not even those little lizards, the blue nitro, Jiro hadn't paid them any mind. So he had never even thought about the problem of damage knocking, he had subconsciously ignored it. Setsuno knew how much damage Jiro had sealed away over the years. The thought of it all being released was enough to make one's scalp tingle. It was enough damage to destroy a planet. The hidden danger of damage knocking is indeed fatal. Thank you for the reminder, Kenji. Jiro had to take this seriously. He couldn't keep the sealed damage in his body. He had to release it, little by little. He definitely wouldn't release it all at once, not even a god could save him then. Chapter 50, The Life Waterfall Basin. Kenji and the battle wolf, Lotta, arrived at the checkpoint on Zappel Island a day early. Lord Kenji, although this may be your first time entering the gourmet world, since you are a Biotope Zero member selected by the president himself, I won't waste your time advising you to think twice, Elbow said, puffing on his pipe as he handed Kenji's ID back to him. The gourmet world is truly a wild place, but its volatile climate has also become a graveyard for many gourmet hunters, Kenji said, a brow raised, an expectant smile on his handsome face. All of Acacia's full-course menu items were discovered in the gourmet world. Besides those legendary ingredients, there were countless others worth pursuing. The unexplored lands of the gourmet world were vast, meaning there were many ingredients unknown to the common man, which was why it was also called the paradise of food. Many gourmet hunters, with paradise as their goal, had resolutely stepped into it, never to return. The mortality rate was so high that even first-class gourmet hunters could end up buried there. 70% of the Earth's surface was the vast gourmet world. Due to abnormal weather and special magnetic fields, even satellites had difficulty capturing clear images of it. Therefore, before entering, most gourmet hunters knew nothing about what lay ahead. In the seas bordering the human world, flowed the poison tide, a deadly current. And at the boundary of the sky, was a wall formed by a massive low-pressure cyclone. Although the beasts of the gourmet world are powerful, many who enter end up dying in the extreme climate. The human world is a paradise in comparison, Elbow said with a laugh. The law of the jungle is even more pronounced in the gourmet world than in the human world. If you can't adapt, you'll die before you can even begin your journey, Kenji said. He had heard about the gourmet world's environment from Jiro, but this was his first time entering. He couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. Every year, hundreds of people enter through the 18 checkpoints. In the end, none of them return. They all die inside. You'll casually encounter beasts with capture levels in the hundreds, and on top of that, the environment is dangerously fatal. The gourmet world is full of unknowns and dangers. But the ingredients of the gourmet world still attract many fearless gourmet hunters. I try to persuade them every time, but they still jump in as if they're rushing to their deaths, Elbow said, shaking his head. These checkpoints were established by President Ichiryu to isolate the human world from the gourmet world, and they were indeed effective. This route was relatively safe, not many beasts from the gourmet world came this way. Each checkpoint was staffed by first-class gourmet hunters, whose main job was to intercept any beasts that tried to cross into the human world. If a beast from the gourmet world were to escape, even if it wasn't in the thousands, its capture level would be in the hundreds, and the destruction it could wreak on the human world would be immense, like the four beasts. If you've already made the decision, then you're not afraid of death. Well then. We're off. Kenji waved, sitting on Lotta's back. Perhaps smelling the air of the gourmet world, a glint of excitement flashed in the battle wolf's eyes. Kenji applied his flight ability to Lotta, and the two of them floated down at a leisurely pace. Elbow was a little surprised by this method of entry. The previous adventurers had at least brought parachutes or hang gliders. But Kenji, dressed in a white shirt and black capri pants, had no equipment at all. Elbow wasn't worried, though. Anyone selected for Biotope Zero was capable of entering the gourmet world. Boom! During their descent, an air cannonball was suddenly fired at them, but they easily dodged it. It crashed into the cliff face behind them, creating a crater dozens of meters in diameter. The one who had fired the air cannonball was a distant, long-necked, dragon-like creature, a breath dragon, with a capture level of 219. It could fire super-powerful air cannonballs from its nostrils. When Toriko first entered the gourmet world, he had received a baptism, a severe beating, from one of these. Kenji was not at the same level as Toriko was back then, who had been sent flying, coughing up blood, and had nearly died. Kenji glanced back at the cliff face. It was dotted with many circular craters, and in the middle of each was a human-shaped hole. After descending 20,000 meters, they arrived in the Ingra forest of the gourmet world. Kenji could feel that the gravity here was several times that of the human world, and his movements became a little sluggish. However, his physical fitness was formidable, and with the help of his gourmet cells, he quickly adapted to the gravity. The battle wolf, Lada, felt no discomfort at all. As a top-tier beast of the gourmet world, the laws of survival here were etched into her DNA. Remaining vigilant, Kenji began to observe the Ingra forest. The thick, gnarled tree trunks were covered in a layer of green moss. Previous gourmet hunters. In some corners, Kenji saw scraps of clothing, tattered and stained with long-dried blood. He had no idea how long ago they had entered. The people who died here had either fallen to their deaths or been eaten by the beasts. Those who could successfully navigate this forest were not weak. This confirmed what Elbow had said, these people were destined never to return to the human world. Some might have been shot dead against the cliff face by a breath dragon's nostril blast. Kenji found a spot to set up camp and rest for a bit. He would see which Biotope Zero member was coming, and then he would explore the area a little so he wouldn't miss the rendezvous. KCH. 3 red scorpions, each 4 meters long, appeared. Their carapaces were like red armor, and the stingers on their tails glinted menacingly. Their large pincers were as sharp as guillotines, capable of easily cutting a person in half. Oh? Is my gourmet luck kicking in? Home delivery. I won't be polite then. Ingra red scorpion, capture level 81, Kenji said, using the gourmet scanner the Igo had given him to scan the creature. Their red carapaces contained a special metal. The Ingra red scorpions lived in caves rich in metal ore, so their shells were extremely hard and could easily withstand cannon fire. The poison in their stingers was a mixed, deadly neurotoxin, extremely potent. A single drop could corrode a hole in the ground. Even so, in the Ingra forest, they were at the bottom of the food chain. There were many creatures stronger than them. The meat of these red scorpions should be extremely delicious, especially the pincers, which were like those of a large lobster. He could only imagine how plump the meat inside would be. Let's just grill them, he decided. High-end ingredients often only required the most primitive cooking methods. Kenji controlled the heat, and a nearly transparent flame enveloped the red scorpions. Even a special scorpion like this showed a fear of fire. The slowly rising temperature gradually immobilized them, and a fragrant aroma began to waft from the flames. Because they were protected by their shells, he didn't have to worry about the meat inside being burned. Using the scorpion's own shell to cook its meat, nothing would be wasted. Chapter 51, A Hero Saving a Damsel? Itadakimasu. This was Kenji's first time tasting an ingredient from the gourmet world. He was curious to see how it would differ from the ingredients of the human world. Not bad. The light, fatty aroma is rich but not greasy, and it's sweeter than lobster meat. The texture is as smooth and tender as jelly. Kenji's eyes lit up. The body meat was tender and melted in his mouth, sliding down his throat into his stomach. The meat in the pincers was chewy and springy, without any tough, stringy fibers that would get stuck in his teeth. The ingredients of the gourmet world indeed had a different flavor from those of the human world. It was probably a regional characteristic. The capture level of the red scorpion wasn't too high, its main weapon was the deadly poison in its stinger. How was it, Lada? Kenji had only tasted a bit. Most of it had gone into Lada's stomach. He still had a lot of energy stored in his body, he didn't need this extra bit. Lada nodded, letting out a happy and satisfied howl. As a species from the gourmet world, she naturally preferred ingredients from there. Not only did they taste better, but they also contained more energy. The physical toll from being cloned and giving birth was now rapidly recovering, though it would still take some time. At her peak, Lada could reach a capture level of several hundred. Eating some good food would quickly replenish her body's losses. Perhaps because of the bloodline aura emanating from Lada, no other beasts had approached them. The campsite was quiet, but Kenji could feel many eyes on him. As a species at the top of the gourmet world's food chain, the battle wolves were all brave and skilled fighters. Since she was his adopted pet, Kenji planned to raise Lotta to surpass even the Wolf King Guinness. Besides the delicacies of Earth, the vast universe held an endless supply of ingredients waiting to be discovered. The next day, as noon approached, Kenji still hadn't seen anyone arrive. They must have run into some trouble. Although the members of Biotope Zero could enter the gourmet world, it didn't mean they were completely safe. The capture levels of beasts in the human world were generally below 100. In the gourmet world, beasts with capture levels in the hundreds were everywhere, and those in the dozens were less than common dogs. Even encountering a creature in the thousands was not out of the ordinary. The members of Biotope Zero could enter the gourmet world, but they didn't have Ichiryu's overwhelming strength. Besides Ichiryu, Kenji estimated that the strongest members of Biotope Zero could probably handle beasts with capture levels of 2 to 3,000. The weaker ones could likely handle beasts in the hundreds, which would still make them powerhouses in the human world. After all, not everyone was like Ichiryu, who had trained to that level without the help of gourmet cells. Very few people had eaten Acacia's full-course menu, nor had they lived for several hundred years. It would be strange if they could fight creatures with capture levels of 4 to 5,000. During the Gourmet Pyramid arc, although Mansam had said that Zebra was no match for a salamander sphinx, even if the sphinx could only handle beasts in the hundreds from the gourmet world, it could still have defeated the zebra of that time. Author's note: there isn't much screen time for the members of Biotope Zero, and their power levels are unknown. The above is just my personal opinion. If you have other thoughts, feel free to correct me. Confused face. The members of Biotope Zero were mainly able to adapt to most of the harsh environments of the gourmet world. If they encountered a truly powerful beast, they would still die. Ha, I guess I have to take the initiative, Kenji muttered to himself. The Ingra forest was huge, and it was home to many beasts. This was the person Ichiryu had asked him to pick up, his first commission from the Igo. If something went wrong, it would be a huge embarrassment. Lotta, let's go. Kenji sat on Lotta's back and delved deeper into the Ingra forest. He couldn't just wait there for the person to arrive. If they were in trouble, he could lend a hand. He was Jiro's disciple, after all. If he couldn't even handle picking someone up, he would be truly useless. Of course, it was also possible that they just hadn't arrived yet. After all, even if they arrived in the evening, it was still within the same day. Elsewhere. These bird-beaked toads are so troublesome, a woman in a light pink nurse's uniform muttered to herself. She wore a mask that covered the lower half of her face, revealing only a pair of clear eyes. She wore pink and white medical gloves and held a purple umbrella as a weapon. She was surrounded by a swarm of strange creatures with bird beaks and green, toad-like bodies. When their beaks opened, they revealed rows of dense, sharp teeth. The massive, countless swarm was closing in on her. These were bird-beaked toads, and they usually appeared in groups. Individually, they weren't strong, but they were incredibly frenzied. They would charge at any enemy, no matter how powerful, like a honey badger that just didn't care. When they found prey, they would let out a strange cry to attract more of their kind. A single individual had a capture level of only around 100, but when hundreds or thousands of them attacked together, even a beast with a capture level of several hundred could be taken down. The moment the nurse-clad woman encountered the first bird-beaked toad, she knew things had gotten complicated. Sure enough, the toad let out a loud, strange cry, and soon, a massive swarm was upon her. Her strength was considered top tier in the human world. She had already taken out a good number of them, but instead of scaring the others away, it had only attracted more. She was completely surrounded, with no room to even set her foot down. Even for someone of her level, this sheer number was a tricky situation. It wasn't that she couldn't handle them, but it would take a while to deal with them all. She probably wouldn't make it to the rendezvous on time. She was the person Kenji was supposed to pick up. Ichiryu had told her to take the established Igo route. Who would have thought that as soon as she arrived in the Ingra forest, she would run into such a disgusting beast? Caw, caw. The bird-beaked toads let out their strange cries and swarmed toward her. Anyone with trypophobia would probably have a physical reaction on the spot. The woman sighed in frustration. She had no choice but to deal with the toads in front of her. As for being late, she would just have to explain it to the person she was meeting. AWOO. A deafening wolf's howl echoed through the air. A white shadow, as fast as lightning, shot into the swarm of bird-beaked toads, instantly taking out a large number of them and clearing a path in front of the woman. "Is that a bee battle wolf?" The woman was stunned. She recognized the giant white wolf at a glance, which was why she was so surprised. The battle wolf was a top-tier hunter from the second continent of the gourmet world. How could it be here, in the Ingra forest, so close to the human world? This place was a long way from the second continent. She might not recognize other beasts from the gourmet world, but the species of the 8 kings were famous, and their features were easy to identify. Even Ego staff would avoid provoking them if they weren't attacked first. "It's pretty lively here. Are you the one President Ichiryu told me to wait for?" Kenji's voice rang out. He turned to look at the woman behind him. No wonder she was late, she had been surrounded by a swarm of bird-beaked toads. Even for a member of Biotope Zero, dealing with such a large number of beasts in a short time was no easy task. The bird-beaked toads were disgusting creatures. Individually, they were at the bottom of the food chain in the gourmet world. If it weren't for their swarming behavior, they would have been wiped out by other beasts long ago. A swarm of this size could take down a beast with a capture level of several hundred with a high probability of success. 1 or 2 bird-beaked toads were manageable, but that was impossible. Encountering one meant encountering countless more. No one wanted to run into these disgusting creatures. "Is this my chance to be a hero and save a damsel in distress?" The bird-beaked toads are surprisingly considerate. Although, with this woman's strength, she probably didn't need him to save her. Chapter 52, Adas Hino. Kenji looked down at the woman and immediately recognized who she was among the members of Biotope Zero. Adas Hino, a gourmet surgeon and chef. Her bright, intelligent eyes looked much more beautiful than in the manga or anime. The author, Shimabukuro, was notoriously average when it came to drawing female characters, so her design in the manga wasn't particularly stunning. But in person, it was a different story. She was much prettier. Even with the mask on, he could tell she was an attractive woman. Although being a gourmet hunter wasn't her main profession, Adashino's own strength was greater than that of most, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to enter the gourmet world. For her cooking skills to be recognized by Ichiryu, they had to be top tier. "My name is Adas Hino. Are you my future partner, Kenji?" Adas Hino looked at Kenji with some surprise. She had also heard from President Ichiryu that she would be getting a partner, but she hadn't expected him to be so young. He looked a few years younger than her, yet he was already able to enter the gourmet world. She had thought he would be waiting for her on the surface, 20,000 meters above. But to be able to enter this place meant Kenji was strong enough. "I guess so. The old man just told me to pick someone up, he didn't mention anything about a partner." Kenji scratched his head. He hadn't known that the person he was picking up would be his future partner. But having a beautiful woman as a partner was much more pleasant than a guy-guy combo. He hadn't expected the chef partner arranged by Grandmaster Ichiryu to be her. Adas Hino was said to be a genius doctor and one of the top powerhouses in the human world. She must know how to cook many ingredients from the gourmet world and have a lot of experience. "I'm sorry. These bird-beaked toads are very troublesome. I couldn't deal with them in a short time," Adas Hino said apologetically. The number of bird-beaked toads had grown even larger, completely surrounding the two of them and the battle wolf, baring their dense, sharp teeth, a chilling sight. They weren't just on the ground, a huge swarm was also swooping down from the sky, cutting off all escape routes. Although the battle wolf was a threat, the bird-beaked toads were not afraid. Their honey badger-like nature was to fight anything that challenged them. Encountering one bird-beaked toad meant encountering countless more. They were a swarming beast. Kenji glanced at them, his expression calm, and a relaxed smile on his face. He took out 2 knocking guns. This kind of beast was his specialty, he could deal with them with knocking. Jiro's rescue scene in the gourmet world had been very cool. Today, he would replicate it. "It's show time. Dejabu. Leave it to me." Knocking rifle assault mode. HAAA. Swish, swish, swish. Kenji took a deep breath and pulled the triggers of his knocking rifles. Countless anesthetic needles shot out in all directions, accurately hitting the bird-beaked toads and performing knocking on them. In the process, Kenji moved like a master dancer, with a grace reminiscent of Jiro. From the ground to the air, his movements were elegant and fluid. Not a single needle missed its mark. HAAA, warm-up's over. Let's continue the dance. Swish, swish, swish. Exhaling, Kenji seamlessly reloaded and began to dance again, countless anesthetic needles shooting out like a torrential rain. Every single bird-beaked toad in the area was knocked, frozen in place. That knocking gun is, the flying needle model knocking rifle. I remember that not many people can handle the high difficulty assault mode so easily. He didn't miss a single one. What an amazing technique. The scene was so stunning that Hino broke out in a cold sweat. Even the members of Biotope Zero probably couldn't do that. My technique is a bit rusty. Not as skilled as my master. Humph. Kenji muttered to himself, looking at the still smoking knocking rifles. He blew on them gently. Elegance never goes out of style. It was the first time he had dealt with so many beasts at once. He could guarantee the accuracy, but he wasn't as effortlessly elegant as Jiro. Hearing this, Hino thought Kenji was being a bit of a show-off. These bird-beaked toads weren't some low-level beasts. Thank you, Kenji. My future partner, Hino said with a smile. This partner seemed very reliable. You're welcome. You said it yourself, you're my future partner, so this is just part of the job. Kenji waved it off. He had no objection to a partner like this. He had been planning to find a chef partner anyway. He was too lazy to learn himself, and he didn't want to always eat grilled or raw food, so finding a chef was a must. Hino was much prettier than in the manga, having a beautiful chef around would be easy on the eyes. The author, Shimabukuro, was really perfunctory when it came to drawing female characters. Besides, this was President Ichiryu's arrangement, so he couldn't refuse. Irina's cooking skills were decent, but her physical fitness was too poor compared to the chefs of this world. If her strength couldn't keep up in the future, then he wouldn't choose her as a partner. They could just be friends in the chat group. Hino, you know how to cook bird-beaked toads, right? Kenji asked. He wanted to see her cooking skills. There were knocked bird-beaked toads everywhere. They could just pick a few. Even if they didn't taste great, the energy they contained was abundant, and Lotta also needed to replenish her energy with ingredients from here. Not all ingredients from the gourmet world were more delicious than those from the human world, but most of them contained more energy. Yes, leave it to me. Hino nodded and took out her kitchen knife. It wasn't a particularly famous blade, but it was much better than Komatsu's. After all, Komatsu's knife was the first one he had bought with his own savings, so its value was definitely not high. But Hino was a member of Biotope Zero, she was not short on money. However, Kenji was a little puzzled. Milk was also a member of Biotope Zero. Why didn't she ask him to sharpen a better knife for her? Oh, right, the first Milk was probably busy forging the knife that could cook air, so he probably didn't have time to make one for Hino, or she just hadn't asked him. Entering her cooking state, Hino's expression became incredibly serious. She exuded an aura of intense focus. Her knife cut into the bird-beaked toad at its weakest point. The toad had tough skin, a direct, forceful cut would chip the blade. To dissect it precisely required keen observation. Kenji was slightly surprised by Hino's knife skills. As expected of a chef who could enter Biotope Zero, she must have cooked many ingredients from the gourmet world, otherwise, she wouldn't be so skilled. When the bird-beaked toad was dismembered, a reddish-white meat was revealed. It didn't look fatty, it seemed like it could be eaten raw. Kenji, did you bring a pot? Hino thought for a moment and turned to Kenji. She had only brought her knife and other tools. She hadn't expected to have to cook before leaving the gourmet world. Chapter 53, Eating the Bird-beaked Toad. Clang, clang. She had only asked casually, but she hadn't expected Kenji to actually pull out a full set of pots and pans. Hino stared in a daze. To pull so many things out of his pocket, was it some kind of 4D pocket? Wait, is that even possible? Noticing Hino's confusion, Kenji explained, I used my abilities to create a small space where I can store some items. The Star Forger had power over space, and combined with the power of creation, creating a small, stable storage space was a piece of cake for him. When he went out, he could put everything he needed in this small space, leaving his hands free so it wouldn't interfere with battle. What a convenient ability, Hino said. Besides being incredibly strong, this partner of hers was full of surprises. With a full set of kitchen utensils, Hino began to cook. She had brought some of her own seasonings. Flames rose from the pot, and a pungent aroma filled the air. What a powerful smell! Did you use some kind of chili pepper? Kenji's nose twitched, and he asked curiously. The Yavana pepper, a special preparation ingredient. If you use the wrong amount, you'll be numb from the spiciness for a whole year, Hino explained. Can you handle spicy food? She asked. I can. Hino, how did you and Grandmaster Ichiryu meet? Kenji asked. Grandmaster. Hino was a little surprised by the term. She had never heard that President Ichiryu had such a young grand disciple. Jiro is my master, and he's Ichiryu's junior disciple. It's not a problem for me to call him Grandmaster, Kenji explained simply. So that's the relationship. Hino understood now. No wonder Kenji had such a masterful grasp of knocking. He was the disciple of that man. President Ichiryu thought my talents were quite good, so he invited me to join Biotope Zero. She also had some medical skills. She could treat various illnesses and injuries with just a knife. Hino, anyone who can join Biotope Zero is a top-tier talent, Kenji said, feeling that she was being a bit humble. While Hino was cooking, Kenji went to check the chat group. Starforger, Daigo, have you run into any more Kaijo lately? Crash Test Pilot, we have. There are reports of a monster on Kylo's island, but our fighter jets haven't been modified yet. After receiving the intelligence, they had just started modifying the jets. It would still take some time. Starforger, the monster on Kylo's island is called Gakuma. It eats rocks. Because humans started quarrying on the island, its food supply decreased, which angered it and caused it to attack the workers. In the end, it was a conflict between man and nature. Put yourself in its shoes, Kenji thought. That's your home. Strangers come, destroy your house, and take all your food. Anyone would be angry. Crash Test Pilot, is that what happened? Is this the consequence of humanity's destruction of nature? Daigo fell into thought. Mining was a common sight all over the world. As humanity developed, conflict with nature was inevitable. Of course, there were also people who destroyed the environment purely for profit, not for development. Ghost of the Uchiha, a monster is a monster for life. Since it has harmed humans, it is an enemy. Kenji was speechless. Hajike Madara, you. Miss Pink Elf, since this monster isn't inherently evil, is there no chance for peaceful coexistence? Although Elysia loved humanity, she also held a friendly view of other benevolent species. God's tongue, I don't think you can say it's just one side's fault. Humans destroyed the environment, and although Gakuma harmed humans out of anger, it still killed people. Dianmei Ruan, if you don't mind, you can pack up Gakuma and send it to me. Ruanmei was very curious about Kaiju. Starforger, Daigo, here are a few suggestions. Whether you take them or not is up to you. First, try to communicate with Gakuma. Its beam can petrify organic matter. You could try sending some trash over for it to petrify into rocks for food. Second, turn into Tiga and find Gakuma a new home, a place where it won't be disturbed by humans for a long time. As for Ruanmei's suggestion, whether you send it to her is up to you. By the way, there's more than one Gakuma on that island. Crash Test Pilot, I think I know what to do now. Thanks. It's ready. Have a taste. The bird-beak toad meat, stir-fried with extra spicy chili peppers, was a fiery red, as if to say, I'm hot, kid. Hiss. What a kick. Exciting. The moment the red, oily meat entered his mouth, a torrent of spiciness shot straight to his scalp. Kenji's eyes widened slightly. Invigorating. Chomp, chomp. The meat of the bird-beak toad is average. It's a bit tough. As expected, not all ingredients from the gourmet world are more delicious than those from the human world, Kenji said, chewing with a slight frown. To be honest, the texture of the bird-beak toad meat wasn't as good as the Ingra red scorpion from before. It was just average. However, it did contain a lot of energy, which was the only thing that justified its capture level of around 100. Adishino's cooking skills were excellent. As expected of a chef from Biotope Zero. Kenji estimated that she could probably rank in the top 100 of the world's chef rankings. Although this is the gourmet world, not everything is delicious, Hino said. Kenji nodded. Although there were many delicacies in this world, not all ingredients were delicious. For example, the meat of a troll Kong was full of sinews, difficult to cook, and had a poor texture. Of course, the delicious ones were definitely in the majority. I'll be in your care from now on, Kenji, Hino said softly. Although she didn't know this partner of hers very well, she would give it a try. Likewise. I'll be counting on you for the cooking, Kenji said. Now that his partner was confirmed, they would go on ingredient capturing trips together. Irina couldn't always be free, and her strength was still too weak. The gourmet world had many super special preparation ingredients that required a certain level of strength. Don't worry. Besides cooking, I also have some skills as a gourmet reviver, Hino said. Kenji, have you ever been to the second continent before? Isn't that where the battle wolves live? Hino asked curiously. As a member of Biotope Zero, she naturally knew which continent each of the famous 8 kings was distributed on. The bird-beak toads had been knocked by Kenji. The battle wolf was now eating them one by one, a satisfying crunch with each bite. They tasted like chicken, and the protein was n times that of beef. Although the skin of the bird-beak toad was tough, it was nothing to the battle wolf's bite force. Her name is Lotta. She's not a battle wolf from the gourmet world. She was cloned by the Igo from battle wolf DNA. She was born in the human world, Kenji explained. He was in no hurry to leave. He would let Lotta eat her fill first. The energy from the bird-beak toads would allow her to grow stronger quickly. With such an all-you-can-eat buffet, Lotta could eat to her heart's content. I see. I didn't expect the Igo to even be able to clone a battle wolf, Hino said in surprise. She hadn't heard about it, but then again, the battle wolf had only been cloned recently. I can sense that this battle wolf's body is a little weak. Kenji explained, it's because of the cloning, not eating much, and giving birth. Wait, you mean this battle wolf gave birth on its own? Hino was shocked. Cloning was one thing, but giving birth to a pup? What the hell? Maybe that's the magic of gourmet cells, Kenji shrugged. He was suddenly reminded of the Horse King Heracles. Its massive size was unique among the Horse Kings, and it probably didn't have a mate that could match it, yet it could still give birth. Chapter 54, The Abyss lost the 50/50ths again. Having a partner wasn't just about having someone to cook your food. It was also about having someone to take turns on watch. Especially in a dangerous place like the gourmet world, when you needed to divide your attention, the value of a strong partner became apparent. Lotta continued to eat. The ingredients of the gourmet world were packed with energy. She didn't care about the taste, as long as there was enough energy, it was fine. Her aura was visibly strengthening. Lady Justice, the blonde traveler has appeared. At Star Forger. Star Forger, male or female? Kenji sat up. He wasn't sleepy anymore. As everyone knows, in most Genshin Impact fanfiction, the sister, Lumen, is the one who travels through Tivat. Lady Justice, according to the intelligence, it's a female, blonde traveler with a white, flying companion. She just appeared in Mondstadt a couple of days ago and happened to run into Storm Terror attacking the city. This information was sent to Fontaine as an urgent report. Besides the messenger, she was the only one in Fontaine who knew about this. The traveler wasn't famous yet, after all. Oh, it's the sister, the blonde auntie. Ha 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 ha. A delighted smile spread across Kenji's face. He was ecstatic. Poor Abyss Order. They lost the 50/50ths on the prince again. Who knows how many times they've lost? Why am I not surprised at all? This was all due to the influence of the author. In Genshin Impact fanfiction, Ether was rarely the traveler. The Abyss Order always ended up with the prince. Who knows how many pulls it would take to finally get the princess? Come to think of it, did this gacha banner even have a pity system? In the actual game, you had a 50% chance of not losing the 50/50ths. Abyss, answer me, look in my eyes, tell me why. Ether, with me leading you, we can grow bigger and stronger and create a glorious new era. Isn't that good? Abyss, forget it, forget it. We're used to it. There's no princess in this banner anyway. Kenji couldn't recall a single fanfiction where the Abyss Order was lucky enough to get the princess. They probably had to sacrifice the lifespans of all the Abyss mages for that to happen. Lady Justice, is there anything special about that traveler? Furina looked at the report in her hand. Mondstadt was quite far from Fontaine, so the intelligence she had was limited. If it hadn't been for the chance encounter with Dvalin, not many people would have noticed Lumen. Star Forger, well, it's not a matter of whether she's special or not. She's mainly, she is indeed very special. Kenji thought about all the things Lumen would encounter on her journey, and he couldn't suppress a grin. Star Forger, the traveler will commit many criminal acts on her journey. Crash test pilot, Mr. Kenji, I think you used the wrong character for criminal. Star Forger, no. It's the right one. It's that criminal. She was a true criminal traveler. Although many of her actions were due to accidents or necessity, the traveler was indeed very criminal and arrestable. Star Forger, in Mondstadt, because she needed the holy lyre to Himmel, she was tricked by a drunkard into stealing it. In the end, she was intercepted by the Fatui and hunted by the Knights of Favonius as a thief. In Liu, she attended the rite of dissension and happened to witness the assassination of the Geo Archon, Rex Lapis. Because her behavior at the scene was strange and suspicious, she was suspected of being the murderer and was hunted by the Millilith. In Inajima, she crashed an execution right in front of the Raiden Shogun and was once again put on the wanted list. This time, it wasn't a misunderstanding. In Sumuru, because of her connection to the Lesser Lord Kusanali, she stood against the Grand Sage of the Academia and was hunted once again. When she gets to Fontaine, because she stole and ate the cake the Fatui ambassador had prepared for the Hydro Archon without her permission, she will be sentenced to 45 days in prison. Even her long-lost sibling in the Abyss would probably get a headache if they knew what she had been up to. If she caused any more trouble, they might have to come out and save her. Miss Pink Elf, she really is criminal. That word is definitely right. Elysia was amazed. She went to 4 countries, and as expected, she got into trouble in every single one. Did this traveler have some kind of jinxed constitution? Lady Justice, eating the Hydro Archon's cake is a heinous crime. Death penalty. Death penalty. Furina's face changed. Cake was one of her few pleasures. This traveler was too dangerous. No, she couldn't let such a dangerous individual enter Fontaine. And also, was this traveler a walking disaster? Ghost of the Uchiha, this traveler is a real piece of work. Lady Justice, what traveler? She's clearly a criminal traveler. She causes chaos wherever she goes. Furina didn't want such an unstable element in Fontaine. They already had the prophecy to deal with. If a criminal traveler were to show up, they would probably never have a moment's peace. Star Forger, Furina, you're misunderstanding something. The traveler is a good person. See how nice I am? I'm giving you all a good person card. You should be thanking me. Lady Justice, a good person wouldn't steal and eat my cake. That's right. The traveler had crossed her bottom line, cake. Furina swore to protect her cake. Crash test pilot, if I had to use one word to describe her, it would be outlaw. Diane May Ruan, that Geo Archon probably faked his death. How could the death of a god be so unceremonious? Although Ruan May didn't know much about the gods of Tivat, she was quite familiar with the Aeons. Of the known Aeon demises, besides the unexplained cases like Akivalai the Trailblazer, Idrola the Beauty, and Long the Permanence, both Tatsironth the Propagation and Zype the Harmony had fallen in battles between Aeons. If an Aeon were to suddenly and unceremoniously perish for no reason, there was a very high probability that Aha the Elation was just having some fun. Any strange and incomprehensible event in the universe could be blamed on Aha, and you wouldn't be wrong. Lady Justice, the Geo Archon of Liu is known as the warrior god. Any powerhouse who could easily kill him would be unmatched by the gods of the 7 nations. Then what really happened with the Geo Archon's assassination? Did he fake his death to retire? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. She had heard that the Geo Archon governed Liu with great order and prosperity. He should be a diligent and reliable senior. Furina, like Nahida, still held a certain idealistic view of her fellow Archons. Miss Pink Elf, Furina, if the traveler really goes to Fontaine, are you really going to turn her away? Lady Justice, this. If she can be a little more stable, I won't not let her in. Furina bit her lip. That was all in the future. She knew it was absurd to judge someone based on something that hadn't happened yet. But only a 45-day sentence, that punishment was too light. The laws of Fontaine had to be changed. Anyone who dared to steal and eat the Hydro Archon's favorite cake must be sentenced to death. Die. Die. Let's celebrate. The first death penalty law in Fontaine has been born. Chapter 55, The Air Fruit. Adashino, what are you looking at, an air fruit tree? Kenji followed Adashino's gaze and recognized the name of the ingredient. The air fruit tree was a peculiar tree with no leaves. Round air fruits hung from its branches like light bulbs. The air fruit was a super special preparation ingredient, very difficult to cook. The tree could release various gases contained in the air, sometimes high oxygen, high concentration carbon dioxide, or high concentration carbon monoxide. The latter two were extremely deadly, so one had to find the right moment to act when cooking it. I know there are many air fruit trees growing on the Horse King's Hill. I didn't expect to see them here. It's said that the air fruit is very similar to the salad, air, but much smaller, Hino said, clearly familiar with it. Then can you cook an air fruit, Hino? Kenji knew the steps to cook air. The method for the air fruit should be similar. It shouldn't be a problem. If the cooking methods for the air fruit and air are similar, I can give it a try, Hino said. Although she knew the cooking methods for all of Acacia's full-course menu items, she had never practiced them. It wasn't time to collect Acacia's full course yet. Each ingredient on that menu could only be cooked once. If you failed, you had to wait for the next time it ripened. The territories of the 8 Kings were places that even the members of Biotope Zero wouldn't enter lightly. Hino, how are you going to cook it? Do you need my help? Kenji asked. As a chef from Biotope Zero, Hino certainly knew how to cook many ingredients from the gourmet world, but knowing didn't necessarily mean she had cooked all of them herself. Kenji was very much looking forward to the taste of the air fruit. It contained a terrifying amount of energy. After eating it, Toriko had been able to sustain his blue demon for a short time. The method to cook air is to release the air from it little by little, cooling the fruit and locking the flavor inside, Hino explained. This was the method for cooking air developed by the nitro. It could preserve 70% of the flavor, with the other 30% being released with the air. She could use this method as a reference for cooking the air fruit. The difficulty of cooking an air fruit should be much lower than air. The method might be slightly different. I'll give it a try. Hino took out her kitchen knife. Kenji could clearly feel that all other emotions had vanished from her, replaced by an intense focus on the ingredient. She was sensing the change in the gases released by the air fruit, looking for the perfect moment. Swish, swish, swish. Not some flashy sword technique, just a simple, unadorned series of cuts. Several flashes of her knife streaked through the air, hitting the entire air fruit tree. The angle and depth of each cut were different. Whoosh! The next second, an incredibly enticing aroma-filled air shot out from the giant fruit, stimulating Kenji's appetite and taste buds. Gurgle, gurgle! A shocking scene occurred. The branches of the tree began to move. The smaller air fruits converged toward the largest one, merging into a single, giant, richly colored air fruit. Snap! The branch seemed to be unable to bear the weight of the ripe fruit. The round fruit suddenly fell. Hino shouted to Kenji, "Kenji, catch it!" Got it! Swish! Starlight gathered, instantly forming a giant energy hand that steadily caught the air fruit before it hit the ground. Hey, this is much heavier than the rainbow fruit, Kenji said in surprise. It was as if it were made of a super dense metal. It was the first time he had been so shocked by the weight of an ingredient. He could only imagine the immense energy it contained. Sniff, sniff. Kenji smelled the fragrance of the air fruit. A special gas shot straight to his head, making his eyes widen. He felt his vision improve significantly, the scenery became much clearer. The effect of air was definitely greater than the air fruit. Just by smelling it, Toriko had been able to see the cosmos. What's wrong? Hino noticed the change in Kenji's expression and asked curiously. Hino, have you ever eaten an air fruit before? No. There are too many ingredients in the gourmet world. It's impossible for me to have eaten everything, Hino said, shaking her head. She was one of the youngest members of Biotope Zero. Then let's enjoy it together. The super special preparation ingredient, the air fruit. After releasing the gas, the air fruit had shrunk a little. Its overall structure was layered like a cabbage, but it felt like meat to the touch. It was very strange. Boom! Kenji ate a piece of the fruit without any seasoning. The muscles in his body instantly swelled, and a powerful wave of energy sent the surrounding fallen leaves and dust flying. Swish! He could feel the oxygen level in his blood increase, which sped up his circulation. His bodily functions had also improved several times over, and he could hold his breath for much longer. If he could easily handle beasts with capture levels of 1 to 200 before, he could now easily handle beasts with capture levels of around 500. The capture level of the air fruit seemed to be over 1,000, while the salad air was probably in the several thousands. Getting stronger in this world was both simple and difficult. It was best to have gourmet cells and then eat high-level, high-energy food. Your strength would skyrocket. The texture of the air fruit was like a tender meat dish, but the taste was an extremely refreshing and complex fruit and vegetable flavor. Even with careful tasting, he couldn't fully distinguish all the flavors. Of all the vegetables he had eaten, he would call this the strongest. Only the taste of air could probably surpass it. Kenji noticed Adashino's face. Since she couldn't wear a mask while eating, he could see her whole face. Her vermilion eyes were as clear as water, her features were delicate, her red lips were like cherries, and she had long, straight, smooth black hair. She was not as plain as the author had drawn her. If a perfect score was 10, Adashino's face was a 9 or higher. As for Elysia, she had to be a 100. Greatness needs no further words. What's wrong? Being stared at so intently by Kenji, Adashino's face couldn't help but blush slightly. Do I look strange? Nothing. I was just curious about something. You're not ugly, Adashino. Even though you're a doctor, you don't have to wear a mask all the time, do you? Wearing a mask is a habit of mine. Although I'm a chef, I've been a doctor for longer. If I run into any injured creatures on the road, it's more convenient to treat them directly, Adashino said seriously. Although the law of the jungle prevailed in the gourmet world, if she encountered such a situation, she couldn't bear to just walk away. Perhaps this was the guidance of gourmet luck. Doing a good deed a day might not bring any direct benefits, but at least she would have a clear conscience. She didn't save every creature, though. For example, those that caused serious damage to nature, no matter how kind-hearted she was, she wouldn't meddle. Chapter 56, Acquiring Gravity. Giant cacti in air devoid of any moisture. A glowing sphere hung high in the sky, radiating a heat as intense as the sun. A network of tubes connected to the sphere, seemingly transporting the energy of this land. This ingredient was called the heat planet, an incredible food, even more precious and high-grade than the air fruit. The heat planet itself possessed a powerful gravitational force that balanced the surrounding gravity. Within the range of its influence, the gravity felt much lighter. The closer one got to the heat planet, the higher the temperature, as if it would evaporate all the moisture from one's body. Kenji and Adashino had entered the area under the heat planet's influence. Besides the cactus-like plants, the land was a barren, red desert. Rolling heat waves washed over them. The air before them seemed to be burning, shimmering and distorting. Sweat evaporated the moment it formed on their skin, saving them the trouble of wiping it away. It was like being in an oven. Adashino, do you know how to cook a heat planet? Kenji asked curiously. The heat planet is a very rare ingredient, even in the gourmet world. There are very few known cooking methods for it. It's said that you have to use brute force to break its outer shell, Adashino said, squinting. The light was too bright, like staring directly at the sun. What a simple and crude cooking method, Kenji commented. Although he hadn't touched the sphere above, Kenji didn't think the heat planet's shell was fragile. Even among the members of Biotope Zero, there were probably few who could break it. This method was likely a last resort for the nitro. Can't you listen to the voice of the ingredients? Kenji asked. Of the top 100 chefs in the world, the number of people who can do that can be counted on one hand, Adashino replied. I can hear it sometimes, and sometimes I can't. In short, it was unreliable. That ability was related to gourmet luck. Komatsu could do it because his gourmet luck was among the best in the world. Komatsu was the protagonist, so his gourmet luck was naturally strong. Adashino, on the other hand, was a supporting character in the manga, so her gourmet luck was definitely not as good as Komatsu's. However, now that she was partnered with a transmigrator like him, perhaps her gourmet luck would gradually improve. Why don't you give it a try? I'm curious to see what a perfectly cooked heat planet tastes like. Alright, I'll try. I can't guarantee success. Adashino closed her eyes. Kenji wasn't in a hurry and didn't rush her. Even if she couldn't hear it, it was no big deal. They could just come back another time. About half an hour later, Adashino opened her eyes and said with pleasant surprise, I heard it this time. We need a higher temperature to ripen the fruit inside, and then the shell will open. Author's note, this is just my guess. But, How do we get a temperature higher than the heat planet right now? Kenji stroked his chin. With a high temperature flame. So, it's my turn to act. Whoosh! A starfire with a starlight effect ignited in Kenji's palm. The flames wielded by the Star Forger would certainly not be cooler than this heat planet. And after eating the air fruit, his strength had just received a boost, allowing him to better control the power of starfire. What a terrifying flame, Hino exclaimed. She felt a deadly threat from this flame, as if it could burn her to ashes if it were to touch her. So I just need to envelop the heat planet with the flame and let the fruit inside ripen? Kenji asked. Yes. Your flame can ripen the fruit inside. Control the heat and make sure the heat planet is heated evenly, Hino nodded. Kenji controlled the starfire, letting it scorch the entire heat planet. Most people would never have thought that this would be the cooking method. The ability to listen to the voice of ingredients was a truly overpowered skill for a chef, a real game changer. Hino gave him occasional reminders, and Kenji was in charge of controlling the heat. 2.5 hours later. Crack! A crisp cracking sound was heard, and a sweet and fresh aroma swept out like a storm. Kenji and Hino couldn't help but swallow, as if they were in a fruit paradise. The flesh of the fruit was a crimson red, crystal clear like a red crystal. The shimmering red light was like a burning flame, but it didn't feel hot. Although the heat planet was 30 meters long, the fruit inside wasn't that big, about half the size of the shell. It's not hot at all. Delicious. The texture is like a soft, glutinous, and chewy cactus fruit. It doesn't have the complex, multi-layered taste of the rainbow fruit, but the sweetness is superior, sweet but not cloying, Kenji said, savoring it with a look of pure enjoyment. He took one bite after another. It was irresistible. The energy it contained was many times that of of the air fruit. The sweetness was also very long-lasting, lingering in the mouth for a long time. Kenji felt his cells evolving. A thought crossed his mind, and his body emitted a strong attractive force. The surrounding stones and sand began to converge toward him. Almighty push! This gravity! Hino felt a sudden pulling sensation on her body and was almost dragged toward Kenji. Sorry, I just learned a new ability, Kenji said, retracting his gravity. The heat planet had a strong gravitational pull, and it was an ingredient. So that was probably why he had learned to control gravity. It was a logical conclusion. Since he had just learned it, he definitely couldn't pull a powerhouse like Hino. Ichiryu's gravity was like an orbiting planet. It would take time for Kenji to reach that level. I've decided. The dessert for my full-course menu, the heat planet. Hino, this is a commemorative dish for our partnership. He and Hino had become partners today, and Kenji felt that the heat planet was a very memorable ingredient. If Hino hadn't heard its cooking method, he would have just been staring at it helplessly. Aside from the power boost it gave him, the wonderful, dreamlike sweetness was unforgettable and very compatible with his gourmet cells. He could feel a sense of pleasure coming from them. He had eaten many delicacies by now, and the taste of the heat planet could temporarily be ranked as number one. Congratulations, Hino said with a smile. She supported Kenji's decision. For their newly formed partnership, it did indeed have a commemorative meaning. By the way, have you decided on the other ingredients? Not yet. The heat planet is the first ingredient I've decided on. I just don't know its exact capture level. Kenji used the Ego's device to test it, and it just displayed garbled characters, which meant the capture level of the heat planet was over 1,000. The boost it gave him was greater than the air fruits. Besides being a suitable dish for him, its level was also higher. I am invincible below 1,000, and I can take one down with me above 1,000. Of course, if he really encountered a beast with a capture level of several thousand, Kenji would just have to choose to run. Live to fight another day. As expected, the ingredients of the gourmet world had a more significant effect on one's strength. The power levels in the later parts of the manga became more and more ridiculous, which was related to the increasingly ridiculous levels of the ingredients. Putting the unfinished ingredients into his small space, Kenji and Hino left the gourmet world. They didn't encounter the big tiger and monkey. Perhaps they were intimidated by the battle wolf's aura and didn't show up. Kenji's full-course menu. Dessert, heat planet. Capture level, 2000. Capture method, ripen the heat planet with super high temperature. Chapter 57, Time to mess with Welt Yang. After returning to the human world, Hino didn't leave with Kenji. She had some matters to attend to. After meeting with Ichiryu, she would return to the healing country, life. As a famous doctor, that was where she lived and worked. She hadn't been back in a while. After she had settled things in the healing country, she would come find Kenji. Lotta, have you grown a bit bigger? After returning home, Kenji noticed that the battle wolf's height had increased by nearly 2 meters. She had been 8 meters tall before, and now she was almost 10. It had only been a few days. The food in the gourmet world was clearly very nutritious. Awoo! Lotta let out a cry. She felt great. After feasting in the gourmet world, she no longer felt as weak as she had in the gourmet Colosseum. Dianmei Ruan, Kenji, the Antimatter Legion of the Destruction faction is approaching Herta's space station. You were right. Star Forger, Ruan Mei, are you at the Herta space station right now? At the beginning of the story, Ruan Mei was nowhere to be seen. She was either not at the space station, or she felt that her intervention wasn't needed to stop the invasion, so she was just conducting her own experiments. Otherwise, knowing that Estelle Laren was present, one that was slightly sentient, how could she have remained indifferent? Dianmei Ruan, yes, I'm currently conducting experiments in the seclusion zone that Herta has allocated to me. Kenji's mouth twitched. Herta gives you a place to experiment, and you're researching the propagation insects there. It was a good thing no other staff members went to the seclusion zone. Otherwise, if they knew there were so many propagation insects down there, they would have probably carried the entire space station and run for their lives overnight. Star Forger, I'm coming over to join the fun in a bit. If I'm going to the world of Honkai, Star Rail, how can I not mess with old Yang? Ha ha ha. Well Yang. I'm coming for you. At this moment, his mind began to race, plotting how he would mess with old Yang. Should he use Otto's line? You are without a father. Although old Yang had never heard it, it would definitely strike a chord. The only problem was that he might get a black hole to the face. That line was the essence of the bishop's charm. Dianmei Ruan, all right. Ruan Mei readily accepted. A strange existence from another world, a face-to-face encounter might give her a lot of inspiration. Miss Pink Elf, I want to go too, but this hairsker hasn't appeared yet. Elysia had been waiting for the appearance of the third hairsker. Although the signs were becoming more and more obvious, the great eruption had not yet occurred. Kenji was a little curious. If Elysia were in the world of Honkai, Star Rail, would she follow the path of the beauty? The path of the preservation was also a possibility. After all, Elysia had so many wonderful qualities. Star Forger, Furina, want to come along? The path that suited Furina should be the path of the preservation. Also, after playing the role of the Hydro Archon for 500 years, the Aeon of Elation might also take a liking to her. Lady Justice, me. Star Forger, that's right. If you come over, you'll have a chance to get a power-up. Lady Justice, all right, I'll go get ready. Hearing the words power-up, the white Ahoge on Furina's head twitched. Although the food Kenji had sent her had made her feel physically stronger, she still couldn't compare to a real god. With more power, she could play the role of a god better. No, with the power of a god, she would be a god. Star Forger, Apollo, how's your recovery coming along? Want to go have some fun? Sun God, I'm at 2/3 of my peak state. If you need my help, just say the word. When Apollo spoke, he exuded a sense of security, a security as reliable as the sun, like a certain captain with shield. As expected of the big daddy of the good guy planetoids, his charisma was unmatched by the others. Lotta, you stay here and watch the house. I have to go out for a bit, Kenji instructed. Lotta had eaten her fill in the gourmet world and didn't need to eat for a while. Awoo. Lotta nodded her huge wolf head. Leaving a battle wolf to watch the house was indeed a luxury. All right, time to go mess with old Yang. He requested to enter Ruan Mei's world. Honkai, Star Rail engage. A spatial vortex opened, and Kenji stepped through. Smack. Ruan Mei, what are you doing? Men and women should keep their distance. The moment Kenji stepped out of the spatial vortex, he saw a jade-like hand reaching for his neck. He immediately grabbed her wrist and said with a half-smile. He knew that Ruan Mei was trying to obtain information about his body through touch. Although they were members of the same group, they weren't that close yet. Not playing by the rules, hey? A sneak attack won't work on me. Kenji released her hand. It was a good thing he had been wary of a genius like her. Ruanmei had an elegant charm. Her blue kipao had an oriental feel, and her hair was adorned with plum blossom ornaments. Her attire had many DNA-related elements, even the garter on her fair thigh was a DNA ring structure. It seems you know me quite well. Ruanmei rubbed her wrist. Kenji was clearly aware of her work habits. Although she couldn't use touch to understand his biological structure, as a genius in the field of life sciences, she could still roughly analyze a creature's basic biological information just by looking at them. You look very healthy. A very perfect organism. I like it very much, Ruanmei said softly, but her voice was devoid of any emotion. Is this a confession? Furina had just arrived and heard this explosive conversation. A faint blush appeared on her pretty face. This is not a confession, Kenji's mouth twitched. Ruanmei's like was not the same as the like Furina was thinking of. Ruanmei liked to study beings like him, the kind that could be put on an operating table and dissected. She saw him as a qualified test subject. You are somewhat special. Ruanmei paid no attention to Furina's words. She walked up to her and touched her neck. Before Furina could react, Ruanmei had already retracted her hand. Your physical strength is not much different from an ordinary person's. Logically, your lifespan should be the same. But a strange power allows you to live for a very long time. It's not a miracle of the abundance. Although you can't compare to Kenji, you are also very perfect. Ruanmei gave a slight compliment. Furina's face showed her shock. To be able to obtain such information with just a touch. Furina shivered a little. The outside world is so scary. Kenji had no objection to Ruanmei's praise. The god Furina had told Nouvelette that in her eyes, Focalors was the perfect human, her ideal self. To play the role of a god for 500 years with the will of an ordinary human, how many people could achieve that? Furina, you can ask Ruanmei for help. She might be able to help you solve the crisis of the prophecy in Fontaine. The people of Fontaine would dissolve when they came into contact with the primordial sea. If this problem could be solved, they wouldn't dissolve in the water. It wasn't necessary to have the complete authority of the ancient dragon. In the field of biology, asking Ruanmei for help would definitely be useful. Of course, this was just one method. Comment. For comment. Vote. Chapter 59, Chapter 58, Tearing up the script. Chapter 58, Tearing up the script. Dissolving in water, it must be related to the constitution of the people of Fontaine, or a special kind of water. If I had a sample, I could try to analyze it for you, Ruanmei said after a moment's thought. If ordinary water didn't cause them to dissolve, then it had to be a problem with the people of Fontaine themselves, or a special kind of water, or both. Furina, when you get back, draw a tube of blood from someone from Fontaine, and then ask your Prime Minister Nouvelette for some water from the primordial sea. Send it to Ruanmei through the chat group, Kenji said. By the way, Dianmei Ruan, a reminder, we are all members of the same group. Don't disrupt this harmonious family. Don't do anything that's not conducive to unity. Otherwise, we can vote to kick you out of the chat group. You don't want to be kicked out, do you? The chat group had a voting option to kick members. As long as more than half of the members agreed, they could say goodbye. I understand. Also, I'll say it again, call me Ruanmei. Ruanmei's eye twitched. Dianmei Ruan was even worse than just Ruanmei with no pause. As for being kicked out, Ruanmei didn't want to be kicked out so soon after joining. After all, this was her shortcut to surpassing herself. And also, that last sentence of yours, it sounds a lot like something from the Xianzhou. Even someone as intelligent as her couldn't understand something like a chat group. It had many magical functions. For example, Kenji and Furina were currently using the chat group's aura concealment function. Otherwise, as outsiders appearing in the universe, there was a high probability that the Aeons would have noticed them. She didn't think a certain god of elation would remain indifferent. Boom! Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Furina, losing her balance, fell on her butt, hitting her tailbone. She gasped, and her eyes began to water from the pain. They're here. The Antimatter Legion. Was it the Stellaron that attracted them? Ruanmei said thoughtfully. Other than that, she couldn't figure out why the Antimatter Legion would come to the territory of an emanator of erudition to cause trouble. However, the Antimatter Legion's reputation wasn't very good. It wasn't impossible that they had come just to provoke the Emanator. It was probably the Stellaran hunters who led them here, Kenji said. The Antimatter Legion could attract most people's attention, making it convenient for Kafka and the others to act. Then, they could be used as newbie village monsters and bosses for the Stellaran spirit to level up on. Mama Kafka, she's so good to us, I could cry. The followers of Destiny's slave, Elio, you mean, Ruanmei muttered to herself. How could she not have heard of the infamous Stellaran hunters? That made sense. The Herta space station had a Stellaran, and it was common knowledge that the Stellaran hunters hunted Stellarans. But to target a Stellaran in the hands of an emanator of erudition, were the Stellaran hunters that brave? Want to go and witness the birth of the Stellaran spirit? Kenji asked with a smile. Stellaran spirit? Ruanmei's eyes were filled with confusion. She knew what a Stellaran was, she was no stranger to them. But she had never heard of a Stellaran spirit. That's right. The Stellaran has gained sentience. Are you in? I'm in. A Stellaran can gain sentience? Interesting. Elsewhere, Kafka was making the motion of playing a violin in the air. There was no violin in her hands, but a melodious sound was indeed coming from them. Elegant, simply too elegant. She had a head of wine-red hair, and her eyes seemed to have a magical power, as if a single glance would put you under her control. Her white shirt perfectly accentuated her curvaceous figure, and the overcoat she wore had a spider web pattern, fitting her style of playing with people in the palm of her hand. Her purple stockings encased her beautiful legs, and her asymmetrical boots were anything but balanced. Purple, very tasteful. It seems I've come at a bad time, an explosion interrupted Kafka's elegant moment. No, I think you've come at just the right time. A screen popped up, displaying a wolf's head logo and some punk-style graffiti. System time 23 hours 47 minutes and 15 seconds. You're right on time, Kafka. The future that Elio sees is never wrong. What was that explosion just now? Is this also in the script? Ring, ring. Suddenly, a phone rang, interrupting Kafka and Silver Wolf's conversation. Is this in the script? Kafka was taken aback. Elio's script shouldn't have included a phone call. Let me see. It's not written in the script. Silver Wolf's slightly childish voice was also a little puzzled. Elio's script had never been wrong before. She had even double-checked it, it wasn't that they had forgotten. It's Elio. Kafka was surprised to see who was calling. She immediately answered the phone. Elio, what's the matter? Meowtherf *er. Kafka, the script has changed, meow. An unpredictable variable has joined the meow squarade. An annoyed voice came from the other end of the line. Kafka's eyes flickered. I see. I understand. Elio's script had never had any variables before. You guys continue with the original script. If something goes wrong, you can abandon it and leave the space station directly. That's all, meow. It was no longer in Elio's control. There were only two choices, continue with the original script, or run. It was up to Kafka and the others to adapt. Elio took another look. Kafka and Silverwolf would not be in any danger. All right. Raib. In the second before the call ended, Kafka clearly heard the sound of paper being torn. What should we do, Kafka? Silverwolf asked. She had never encountered a situation like this before. Elio's script had been affected. Was it Ahoge's doing? The possibility was not small. Let's just stick to the original script. We'll take it one step at a time, Kafka shrugged. No matter what, he had to be awakened. At this thought, Kafka's eyes sharpened. That child could not be harmed. Listen to me. Honey, no playing around this time. Be serious. Kafka directly used her spirit whisper. If the script hadn't changed, it would have been fine, but now they had to go all out. Kafka, I know what's important. Was the spirit whisper really necessary? Silverwolf appeared in front of Kafka using ether editing, looking helpless. Compared to Kafka's full figure, Silverwolf was like a bratty little girl. But Brynja's butt was indeed nice, worth a look. Honey, if something goes wrong, your future game time. Kafka said in a gentle voice. I get it. No matter what the variable is, I, Silverwolf, will crush them all. Silverwolf's eyes were extremely serious. She was fired up. That's right, Kafka had her weakness. If anyone else had said it, she would have scoffed. But coming from Kafka, she couldn't ignore it. Kafka could do it, a single spirit whisper could make her stare at her games but not be able to play. Very good. Let's go. Kafka nodded in satisfaction. Silver Wolf's attitude was good. A serious Wolf King was different. The Antimatter Legion blocking their path were all thrown out of the space station as space junk by Silver Wolf using ether editing. Kafka is too gentle. She should have used Spirit Whisper to make Silver Wolf control her own game account to go AFK and get flamed by her teammates, calling her a noob. That would have definitely made the little girl blush. After Kafka and Silver Wolf left, Kenji and the others emerged from the space. They had heard the entire conversation. The variable Elio mentioned, "It must be us, right?" Ruanmei said calmly. She had figured it out at once. If Kenji and the others hadn't come, she definitely wouldn't have gotten involved in this. That's right, it's us. Let's go to the Stellaron and wait for them. Kenji opened another spatial rift and took the others away. He knew where the Stellaron was better than Kafka and the others. It was like going home. So confident that you can crush me, this variable? Heh. As for tricking Silver Wolf. 76. Heh, I have an idea. Chapter 59, The Star-Forging Dragon. Containment Zone The Void. So this is a Stellaron. The power inside is indeed quite impressive, Kenji said with great interest. A glowing golden sphere was held in place by a protective field. If it were to erupt, the entire Herta space station would be affected, unless Herta herself intervened. The space station was built for the very purpose of containing this inactive Stellaron, to prevent the nearby planet, Gerilo 6, from being affected by a Stellaron disaster. Seeing this Stellaron, Kenji had a bold idea. Although the Stellarons scattered throughout the universe aren't everywhere, would the Stellaron hunters really clash with Herta over a single one? Ruanmei's interest in the Stellaron itself wasn't particularly high. You should ask Elio or Mihoyo about that. It feels very dangerous, Furina shivered. If this Stellaron were to erupt in Tivat, probably no one could stop it. The Star Forger could create stars, so Kenji could now also absorb the power of stars. The Stellaron also had the word star in it. In Kenji's eyes, this golden Stellaron had a use. He couldn't help but lick his lips. VMM. Kenji instinctively reached his hand toward the Stellaron. The field that contained it did not trigger any counterattack or alarm. The Stellaron seemed to sense a threat and began to resist. Muta. Kenji grabbed the Stellaron and immediately began to refine it. Itadakumesu. The phantom of a star dragon appeared behind Kenji, mysterious, powerful, majestic. Furina and Ruanmei both felt a disparity in their very beings. They felt as small and insignificant as dust. However, the dragon phantom didn't last long. Kenji's right hand, which was holding the Stellaron, began to shimmer with starlight. The golden glow of the Stellaron, now as timid as a quail, flowed up his arm and into his body. The power of the Dragon King was just that awesome. It directly suppressed the Stellaron's energy. A Pathstrider would never dare to absorb the power of a Stellaron like he was doing. His review of the Stellaron's taste, average, not even as good as a bird-beaked toad. The energy of the Stellaron was not pure, so when Kenji absorbed it, his body automatically discarded a large, unpalatable portion. After all, he wasn't Neo, who would eat anything and everything. Disclaimer: the power of the Star Forger suppresses the Stellaron. The protagonist's level of existence is no longer that of an ordinary human. Absorbing the energy of a Stellaron, there shouldn't be any problem with that, right? Besides ingredients, gourmet cells could also devour other forms of energy. For example, Neo, to a certain extent, could devour the energy of various attacks. It had devoured the energy of Jiro's earth-knocking and Dawn Slime's attacks. He can actually absorb the power of a Stellaron. Ruanmei was shocked. She had never heard of anyone who could absorb this thing. After all, the Stellaron was known as the cancer of all worlds, and it contained a great deal of harmful energy. If one were to try to refine a Stellaron, even if they weren't killed by the sheer amount of energy, their body would be contaminated. At this moment, Kenji's consciousness seemed to enter an unknown place. Here, there was only endless darkness and nothingness, like the beginning of the world. The next moment, a giant star dragon, covered in starlight and the colors of the cosmos, appeared in this empty space. Its true form was too vast to be measured, too grand to be described. Kenji's eyes widened. It was the Star Forger. The silence of the cosmos. This place of nothingness made the Star Forger feel bored and lonely. He had been born too early. The Star Forger opened his giant, starry dragon claw, and an endless amount of stardust gathered in his palm, forming a rotating galaxy. In an instant, a bright stellar core formed, and then it expanded violently. An endless light burst forth from the star in his palm, like a newborn star. The giant star erupted with a terrifying light and heat, standing out in this void, illuminating the eternal emptiness. Boom! Perhaps because this star had no life, the Star Forger gently squeezed his hand, and the star, which contained a terrifying amount of energy, was instantly crushed into dust and dissipated. Kenji was shocked. For the Star Forger to crush a star, it was probably easier than for a human to crush an ant. He knew this was just the tip of the iceberg of the Star Forger's power. The Star Forger began to create again. This time, he used primordial starfire, a flame from before the creation of the world, which could create and forge stars, as well as incinerate all things. A vibrant star was born in his palm. He could feel that the Star Forger was pleased. For countless eons, he had tirelessly created stars, crafting an endless cosmos with the heart of an artisan. My stars shine because of all things. Kenji watched intently. With this 3D movie-like tutorial, he could avoid many detours. He was eager to improve. The energy of the Stellaron had given him a certain boost, equivalent to a capture level of about 500. After all, he had wasted a large part of the energy in the process. The main gain was not the increase in strength, but the many images he had witnessed. Before, he had used the Star Forger's abilities like following a formula. But now, after watching this 3D movie, he could intuitively grasp the details, which would allow him to use his abilities more smoothly. For example, before, it took him 10 seconds to create a mini-planet. Now, he could do it in under 3. Ruanmei, and 2 unfamiliar beings. It seems you are the variables Elio spoke of. Kafka and Silverwolf arrived in the space. Seeing the people who were not in the script, their brows furrowed slightly. Not to mention Kenji and Furina, the presence of Ruanmei, a member of the Genius Society, was completely unexpected. Great Herta hadn't appeared, but her colleague had. Kafka. Silver Wolf. Ruanmei's calm gaze fell on the tall and short pair. It was said that Kafka could not feel fear. Was it a problem with her amygdala, or her autonomic nervous system? As for the little one, Silver Wolf, Ruanmei had heard of her. She had once fought against Skrullum, but that was because Skrullum hadn't been serious. The computing power of Skrullum's planet was terrifyingly immense. What adult would get angry with a child? You seem to know that we would come here. Kafka asked calmly. She now suspected that Elio's script had been leaked, or that someone on the same path as Elio had intervened. Kafka, look, the Stellaron. Silver Wolf's shocked voice rang out. Kafka looked over, her brows furrowing tightly. The Stellaron in Kenji's hand seemed to have been completely drained. It had become a transparent glass sphere. The energy inside had been sucked dry. Is this person an emanator? At the very least, an ordinary path strider could never do such a thing. Hi, hello there, Kafka, and Brynja, Kenji said, opening his eyes and looking at the two with a grin. As expected of Mama Kafka, she was very motherly. As for Silver Wolf, she could sit at the same table as Furina. Furina, who was familiar with Kenji, retreated behind him, using him as a shield. Kafka's expression was a little grim. The starlight that had flashed in Kenji's eyes just now had made her tremble. Although she couldn't feel fear, she could feel a kind of superior pressure. Tisk, this one's a bit tough. A member of the Genius Society and an unknown powerhouse. Only Furina looked easy to bully. I'm not Brynja. Silverwolf felt that the nickname carried a deep malice. She subconsciously looked down and could indeed see her own feet. Of the girls present, only the 500-plus-year-old Furina gave her a little comfort. It's fine. I'm still young. I can still grow. Silverwolf comforted herself.
Thanks for listening.